Hello and welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Tonight we're going to explore something you do every single day, or at least every single night. Something so familiar that you might never have stopped to really think about it. We're going to talk about sleep. Sleep is one of those rare experiences that binds every human being together. Rich or poor, young or old, no matter where you live or what language you speak, you will spend roughly a third of your life asleep. That's about 26 years, if you live an average lifespan. More time than you'll spend working, more time than you'll spend eating or traveling, or doing any other single thing except being awake. And yet, for something so universal, sleep remains deeply mysterious. We still don't fully understand why we need it, what all of it does, or where consciousness goes when we drift away each night. We're only beginning to map the strange territories of the sleeping brain. So before we begin, if you're enjoying this journey into the science of sleep, consider subscribing to the channel. It helps more people find these late-night explorations, and it means we can keep making them together. Get comfortable. Adjust your pillow. Let your breathing slow down. Now let's begin. Let's start with something simple, something grounding. Humans spend approximately 1/3 of their lives asleep, roughly 26 years for an average lifespan. Think about that for a moment. 26 years. If you could stack all your sleeping hours together, they would fill more than a quarter century. It's more time than most people spend in school, more time than many marriages last, more time than entire careers. And yet we often treat those hours as if they're just empty, dead time, the void between days. But they're not empty at all. During those 26 years of sleep, you're not absent. You're not gone. Your brain is working, sometimes harder than it does when you're awake. Your body is rebuilding itself, cell by cell. Your memories are being sorted, filed away, strengthened or dissolved. You're processing emotions, solving problems, even practicing skills. In a very real sense, you're not the same person when you wake up as you were when you fell asleep. Sleep changes you. Every single night, it quietly rewrites parts of who you are. Which brings us to something important. Sleep isn't just turning off the brain. It's not like flipping a switch or shutting down a computer. Sleep is an incredibly active state with distinct stages that cycle throughout the night. If you could watch your own brain sleeping, if you could see the waves of electrical activity rippling across your cortex, you'd notice something surprising. During certain stages of sleep, your brain often works harder than during many waking activities. It's not resting. It's reorganizing, it's consolidating, it's solving. Scientists sometimes talk about the brain having different modes, like a phone switching between different apps. There's the mode for focusing on a task, the mode for daydreaming, the mode for remembering. And then there are the sleep modes, multiple distinct states, each with its own electrical signature, its own purpose, its own rhythm. Your sleeping brain cycles through these modes all night long, like a factory running different shifts. Early in the night, one type of work dominates. Later, another takes over. Each stage seems to specialize in different kinds of maintenance, different kinds of processing. And if you miss one stage, you can't necessarily make it up with more time in another. Each has its role to play. The word sleep itself comes from the Old English slepan, which shares roots with words meaning to be weak or to slacken. Ancient languages recognize sleep as a state of letting go, a temporary surrender of vigilance. There's something profound in that etymology, isn't there? Sleep is surrender. Every night you make yourself vulnerable. You lie down. You close your eyes. You release your grip on consciousness and let yourself fall into a state where you can't defend yourself, can't respond to threats, can't even know what's happening around you. From a survival perspective, sleep seems almost reckless. Imagine being a small mammal on the ancient savanna, closing your eyes for 8 hours while predators roam. And yet every species does it. Birds sleep, fish sleep, even insects sleep. Evolution has never produced a creature that can skip sleep entirely. That tells us something important. Sleep must offer benefits so profound, so essential, that they outweigh the enormous risk of unconsciousness. It must be doing something so valuable that life itself can't function without it. We're still discovering exactly what all those things are, but the fact that sleep persists, that it's never been eliminated by millions of years of evolutionary pressure, suggests it's woven into the very fabric of biological existence. Speaking of which, sleep is so essential that every known animal species does it in some form, including insects, fish, and birds. Even fruit flies, with their microscopic brains, require sleep. Deprive a fruit fly of rest, and it shows cognitive impairment, slower reactions, poor decision-making, the insect equivalent of grogginess. Give it a chance to sleep and it recovers. The sleep is functional. It does something that being awake cannot do. This universality is remarkable. Think about all the things that vary wildly across species. Some animals have eyes, some don't. Some have complex social structures, others are solitary. Some live in the ocean, some in deserts, some in frozen tundra. But all of them sleep in one form or another. That suggests sleep predates many of the features we associate with complex life. It's older than backbones, older than legs, older than sophisticated brains. Sleep might be as fundamental to life as eating or breathing, one of the original biological necessities, established early in evolution's long story and never discarded. There are two main types of sleep: REM, which stands for rapid eye movement, and non-REM, which are as different from each other as they are from wakefulness. This is one of those discoveries that changed everything. Before 1953, scientists thought sleep was just sleep, a single uniform state of unconsciousness. Then researchers noticed something odd. Sometimes sleeping people's eyes moved rapidly beneath their closed eyelids, and when they woke these people up during these eye movements, the sleepers almost always reported dreaming. This was the discovery of REM sleep, and it revealed that sleep wasn't one state, but at least two completely different states, as distinct from each other as night and day. Non-REM sleep is deep, quiet, restorative. REM sleep is active, chaotic, vivid. Your brain during REM sleep looks, on a monitor, almost indistinguishable from your waking brain. Scientists sometimes call it paradoxical sleep because you're deeply unconscious, yet your brain is lit up like you're awake and alert. It's paradoxical in another way, too. During REM sleep, your voluntary muscles become paralyzed, except for your eyes and your diaphragm. Your brain is wildly active, possibly dreaming elaborate scenarios, but your body is frozen. It's as if your mind has disconnected from your physical form, running simulations in a ghost machine. A complete sleep cycle, from light sleep through deep sleep to REM, takes about 90 to 110 minutes, and most people experience 4 to 6 of these cycles each night. Picture it like waves rolling in from an ocean. The first wave arrives gently, light sleep, barely distinguishable from wakefulness. Then it deepens, pulling you down into the quiet depths where your brain waves slow to their most languid rhythm. Finally, the wave crests into REM, active and vivid before receding again. And then the next wave begins. Light sleep again, deep sleep again, REM again. Each cycle is a journey, and you take that journey multiple times every night without knowing it. You're an unconscious traveler, moving through territories you'll never remember visiting. What's fascinating is that these cycles aren't identical. The first cycle of the night has more deep sleep and less REM. As the night progresses, deep sleep becomes shorter and REM becomes longer. By morning, you might be spending 30 or 40 minutes in REM sleep in a single cycle, dreaming elaborate narratives that evaporate the moment you wake. Your brain knows what it needs at different times. Early night, deep restoration, late night, processing, integrating, dreaming. It's a carefully choreographed dance, timed and sequenced by mechanisms we're still working to understand. The discovery that sleep has stages didn't happen until 1953, when researchers first observed rapid eye movements in sleeping subjects. For all of human history before that moment, sleep was thought to be a single uniform state. You were awake or you were asleep. Simple, binary. People had been sleeping for hundreds of thousands of years, and no one knew there were stages, cycles, rhythms happening beneath the surface of unconsciousness. It's humbling, in a way. Sleep is so familiar, so intimate. You've done it every night of your life. And yet its basic structure was invisible until someone thought to watch people's eyes and measure their brain waves in the 1950s. How many other mysteries are hiding in plain sight in the things we do every day without thinking? The discovery of REM sleep opened up an entirely new field of research. Suddenly, scientists could ask, what's happening during these different stages? Why do we need both kinds of sleep? What happens if you deprive someone of one stage but not the other? These questions led to decades of research that we're still building on today. Your body temperature drops by about 1 to 2 degrees Fahrenheit during sleep, reaching its lowest point around 4 to 5 a.m. This temperature drop isn't a side effect of sleep. It's part of the process itself. Your body actively cools itself down to initiate sleep. This is why it's harder to fall asleep in a warm room. Your core temperature needs to drop, and if the environment is too warm, your body struggles to shed that heat. Think about the last time you couldn't sleep on a hot summer night. Even though you were exhausted, your body was trying to cool down, trying to trigger the temperature drop that signals sleep, but the environment was working against it. You were stuck in a kind of physiological stalemate. This temperature rhythm is controlled by your circadian system, the internal clock that coordinates sleep and wakefulness. In the evening, your temperature begins to fall. It keeps dropping through the night, reaching its lowest point in the early morning hours. Then it begins to rise again, warming you back toward wakefulness. Some sleep researchers suggest that one reason morning feels easier than evening for many people is this temperature rise. Your body is literally warming up, bringing your systems back online, preparing you for the day ahead. Stage 1 sleep, the lightest stage, lasts only 5 to 10 minutes, and is so subtle you might not even realize you've been asleep. This is when you experience that falling sensation called a hypnic jerk, as your muscles suddenly relax. You know that feeling. You're drifting off, hovering in that twilight space between waking and sleeping, and suddenly your whole body jerks and you feel like you're falling. Maybe you even see yourself tripping or stepping off a curb. Your heart rate spikes. For a moment, you're fully awake again. These hypnic jerks are completely normal, though scientists aren't entirely sure why they happen. One theory is that as your voluntary muscles relax, as your brain relinquishes control over your body, some part of your nervous system misinterprets this relaxation as falling. It triggers a protective reflex, an attempt to catch yourself, even though you're lying safely in bed. Another theory suggests it's just neural noise, random firing as your brain transitions between states. The threshold between waking and sleeping isn't a clean line. It's a fuzzy boundary, and crossing it can produce strange sensations and experiences. Stage 1 is brief and fragile. A small sound can pull you back to wakefulness. You're not yet committed to sleep. You're just testing the waters, dipping a toe into unconsciousness. Stage 2 sleep makes up about 50% of your total sleep time and features sudden bursts of brain activity called sleep spindles. Sleep spindles are odd little things. They're brief bursts of rapid brain waves, lasting just a second or two, that appear periodically during stage 2 sleep. On a brain monitor, they look like little explosions of activity against a relatively quiet background, hence the name spindles. Scientists believe these spindles might be your brain's way of blocking out external sounds and sensations to keep you asleep. They seem to coincide with moments when the brain is processing and consolidating memories, locking in the information gathered during the day. The spindles might create a kind of protective barrier, preventing outside stimuli from interrupting the delicate work of memory formation. Interestingly, people who have more sleep spindles tend to be more resistant to noise during sleep. If you can sleep through a thunderstorm or a noisy street, you might have particularly robust spindles, actively protecting your consciousness from intrusions. Stage 2 is where you spend most of your night, especially in the latter half of your sleep. It's not as deep as stage 3, but it's not as light as stage 1. It's the middle ground, the stable platform from which you descend into deeper sleep and ascend into REM. Half your night is spent here, in this intermediate state, where your brain quietly works on strengthening connections and filtering out the noise of the world. Deep sleep, stage 3, is when your brain waves slow down to delta waves, the slowest brain waves humans produce. If you could see these waves on a monitor, they would look like rolling hills, rising and falling in long, gentle curves. They're so slow, so synchronized, that they seem almost meditative. Your entire cortex is pulsing together, billions of neurons firing in harmony, creating these massive, sweeping waves of electrical activity. Delta waves are powerful. They're the signature of the deepest rest your brain can achieve while still maintaining basic life functions. This is the sleep from which it's hardest to wake. If someone shakes you during deep sleep, you'll feel disoriented, confused, as if you're being pulled up from the bottom of a deep well. Your brain needs time to transition back to faster wave patterns, to reconnect with the waking world. Children spend much more time in deep sleep than adults do. An infant might spend hours in this state each night, but as you age, deep sleep becomes shorter, more fragile. By the time you're elderly, you might get very little stage 3 sleep at all. Your brain waves never quite slow down to those long, rolling delta rhythms anymore. Scientists aren't entirely sure why this happens, but it might be related to changes in the brain's ability to synchronize its activity. Deep sleep requires billions of neurons to coordinate their firing. As the brain ages, that coordination becomes harder to achieve. The orchestra struggles to stay in time. During deep sleep, your brain can wash itself through the glymphatic system, flushing out toxic proteins that accumulate during the day. This discovery, made only in 2012, changed our understanding of what sleep does. For decades, scientists knew sleep was restorative, but they thought that restoration was mainly about neural processes, consolidating memories, balancing neurotransmitters, things like that. They didn't realize sleep was also physically cleaning the brain. Here's how it works. Between your brain cells, there are tiny spaces filled with cerebrospinal fluid. During wakefulness, these spaces are relatively small, but during deep sleep, your brain cells actually shrink slightly, expanding the spaces between them. This allows cerebrospinal fluid to flow through your brain tissue much faster than usual, washing away metabolic waste products that built up during the day. It's like your brain has a cleaning crew that only comes out at night. During the day, while you're thinking and working and experiencing the world, waste products accumulate, including proteins like beta amyloid, which is associated with Alzheimer's disease. During deep sleep, the glymphatic system flushes these proteins away, carrying them out of the brain so they can be cleared from the body. If you don't get enough deep sleep, these waste products might not get fully cleared. They might accumulate over time. Some researchers believe this could be one mechanism linking poor sleep to increased risk of neurodegenerative diseases. Your brain needs that nightly wash, that tidal flow of cleaning fluid, to maintain itself over decades of use. Growth hormone is released primarily during deep sleep, which is why children need more of this stage than adults. When people say that children grow in their sleep, they're not being metaphorical. They're describing a literal biological process. During deep sleep, your pituitary gland releases pulses of growth hormone into your bloodstream. This hormone stimulates growth in children, lengthening bones, building muscle, developing tissues. In adults, it helps maintain and repair those same structures. This is one reason why sleep is so critical during childhood and adolescence. A teenager who's chronically sleep deprived isn't just tired, they're potentially interfering with their own physical development. The growth hormone they need is released on a schedule, and that schedule is tied to sleep. Miss the sleep and you might miss the growth. Even in adulthood, growth hormone remains important. It helps repair tissues, maintain muscle mass, regulate metabolism. Athletes know this instinctively. Recovery happens during sleep. You can train as hard as you want, but if you don't sleep, you won't build strength. The actual construction work, the rebuilding of muscle fibers, the strengthening of connective tissue, happens at night, during deep sleep, when growth hormone is flowing. You get more deep sleep in the first half of the night and more REM sleep in the second half. Your sleep is front-loaded with restoration and backloaded with dreaming. In the first cycle or two of the night, you might spend 20 or 30 minutes in deep sleep. By the final cycles before morning, you might get only a few minutes of deep sleep, or none at all. Instead, REM sleep dominates, with some cycles containing 40 minutes or more of vivid, active dreaming. This is why waking up too early, even if you've slept for 6 hours, can feel so different from waking up naturally after 8 hours. You're not just getting less sleep, you're getting less of a specific type of sleep. You're missing those long REM periods at the end of the night, the ones where your brain does some of its most elaborate processing. It's also why all-nighters are so devastating. It's not just that you're tired. It's that you've missed both the deep sleep restoration of early night and the REM processing of late night. You've skipped the entire sequence your brain was expecting to complete. The shifting ratio of sleep stages across the night suggests your brain has a schedule, a planned sequence of maintenance tasks. First, handle the physical restoration and the most critical memory consolidation. Then, once that foundation is secure, move on to the more complex integration work that happens during REM. It's organized, deliberate, essential. The ratio of sleep stages changes dramatically across your lifespan. Newborns spend 50% of sleep in REM, while elderly adults spend only 15%. A newborn baby sleeps 16 to 18 hours a day, and about half of that time is spent in REM sleep. Their little eyes move beneath their closed lids for hours and hours. They're dreaming in some sense, though we can't know what a newborn dreams about. What experiences could they possibly be processing? They've barely been in the world. Some scientists believe this high proportion of REM sleep in infancy is related to brain development. REM sleep might provide internal stimulation that helps wire up the developing brain. The infant's brain is building itself, forming connections, establishing the basic architecture of consciousness. REM sleep might be part of that construction process. As you age, the proportion of REM gradually decreases. By adulthood, you spend about 20 to 25% of sleep in REM. By old age, it might drop to 15% or less. Deep sleep decreases even more dramatically. Some elderly people get almost no stage 3 sleep at all. This progressive change in sleep architecture across the lifespan mirrors other developmental changes. Your brain ages. Your needs shift. The infant brain is building itself. The adult brain is maintaining itself. The elderly brain is, perhaps, gradually letting go. Sleep changes with you, adapting to what you need at each stage of life. During REM sleep, your voluntary muscles become temporarily paralyzed, a phenomenon called REM atonia. Every night, multiple times, your brain disconnects from your body. It sends a signal down your spinal cord that prevents motor neurons from activating your muscles. Your skeletal muscles go limp. You can't move, can't respond, can't act. Only your diaphragm continues working. You keep breathing, and your eye muscles remain active. Your eyes dart back and forth, scanning the dream imagery that only you can see. This paralysis serves a critical function. It prevents you from acting out your dreams. Without it, you might punch, kick, run, thrash around in response to dream events. You could hurt yourself or anyone sleeping near you. REM atonia keeps you safe while your mind explores scenarios that might involve intense action or emotion. Occasionally, the system fails. There's a disorder called REM sleep behavior disorder, where the paralysis doesn't occur properly. People with this condition do act out their dreams. They might throw punches at dream attackers, leap out of bed to escape dream threats, even injure themselves seriously. It's a window into what REM sleep would be like without the protective paralysis. Chaotic and dangerous. Most of the time, though, the system works perfectly. You dream of running, but your legs don't move. You dream of shouting, but you make no sound. You're a consciousness operating in a simulated environment, while your physical form lies still and silent. Your eyes move during REM sleep because you're looking at your dream imagery, scanning the dream environment. This is one of those discoveries that seems obvious in retrospect, but was revolutionary when first demonstrated. Researchers noticed that the direction and pattern of eye movements during REM sleep sometimes correlated with the content of dreams. If you dreamed of watching a tennis match, your eyes might move back and forth horizontally. If you dreamed of climbing stairs, they might move vertically. It suggests something profound about the relationship between dreaming and perception. You're not really seeing anything. Your eyes are closed, receiving no visual input from the outside world. And yet your brain creates visual experiences so convincing that your eyes respond to them as if they were real. The visual cortex generates imagery, and the eye muscles react, scanning a scene that exists only in neural activity. It's a bit like watching a movie so immersive that you forget you're in a theater. Except in dreams, there is no theater. There is no screen. There's just your brain generating experiences from memory and imagination, and your body treating those experiences as real enough to warrant visual scanning. This blurring of internal and external reality happens every night. Your brain creates a world, and for a while you inhabit it completely, without questioning its authenticity. Only upon waking do you realize it was all constructed from within. People awaken during REM sleep can recall their dreams about 80% of the time, but only 40% when awakened from non-REM sleep. You dream throughout the night, not just during REM sleep, but REM dreams are different, more vivid, more narrative, more emotionally intense, more bizarre. Non-REM dreams tend to be more thought-like, more mundane, more fragmented. They're less like watching a movie and more like having vague impressions or snippets of experience. This difference in recall tells us something about how memory formation works during different sleep stages. During REM sleep, more of your brain is active, including regions associated with memory encoding. The dreams are more elaborate, and they're more likely to be transferred into a form you can remember upon waking. But even REM dreams evaporate quickly. If you wake from a vivid dream and don't immediately rehearse it, don't mentally review it or write it down, it can vanish within seconds or minutes. You'll know you were dreaming, might remember the emotional tone, but the specific content just disappears. This rapid forgetting is probably adaptive. If you remembered every dream in detail, your memory would be cluttered with fictional experiences that never actually happened. Your brain needs to distinguish between real memories and dream memories. And one way it does that is by making dreams inherently forgettable. They're vivid while you're in them, but they're not built to last. In REM sleep, your brain uses almost as much energy as when you're awake and focused on a challenging task. Metabolically speaking, REM sleep is expensive. Your neurons are firing rapidly, consuming glucose, generating heat. blood flow to your brain increases, oxygen consumption rises. By some measures, your brain is working harder during REM sleep than during many waking activities. And yet you're unconscious. Your body is paralyzed. You're not responding to the environment or producing any useful output. From a practical standpoint, REM sleep seems wasteful. All that energy expenditure for no apparent purpose. But that's only true if you think of sleep as doing nothing. If REM sleep is actively processing information, integrating experiences, solving problems, reorganizing neural networks, then the energy expenditure makes sense. Your brain is working, just not on the external world. It's working on itself, and that work is apparently demanding enough to require nearly as much energy as waking cognition. This is part of why sleep deprivation affects you so profoundly. You're not just resting during sleep. You're running energy-intensive processes that can't happen while you're awake. Miss those processes, and you've missed essential maintenance, like skipping oil changes for your car. Eventually, things start to break down. Everyone dreams, even people who insist they don't. They simply don't remember their dreams. There's a common misconception that some people dream and others don't, that dreaming is optional or variable. But sleep lab studies show that everyone enters REM sleep, and during REM sleep, everyone shows brain activity consistent with dreaming. The difference is in recall, not in whether dreaming occurs. Some people remember multiple dreams every night. They wake with vivid recollections of entire narratives, complete with dialogue and sensory details. Other people almost never remember dreaming. They wake with no sense of having experienced anything during the night. But if you wake these non-recallers during REM sleep and ask them immediately what they were experiencing, they'll often report dreams. The difference might be related to how deeply you sleep, how suddenly you wake, or how much attention you pay to your dreams upon waking. People who think about their dreams, who value them, and try to remember them, tend to recall more. People who dismiss dreams as unimportant noise tend to forget them immediately. But whether you remember them or not, you're dreaming. Every night, your brain is creating experiences, generating scenarios, processing emotions and memories in the form of surreal narratives that feel completely real while they're happening. The average person has 3-5 dreams per night, though most are forgotten. Over a lifetime, you might have over 100,000 dreams, an entire parallel universe of experiences that exists only in your sleeping mind. Think about that number for a moment. 100,000 dreams. If each dream lasted just 5 minutes, that would be over 8,000 hours of experience. An entire year of your life spent in imaginary scenarios, fictional conversations, impossible landscapes. And almost all of it vanishes without a trace. You've lived entire lifetimes in your dreams that you can't remember. You've had conversations with people who don't exist, visited places that were never built, solved problems that were never real. Each night adds a few more dreams to this vast, inaccessible archive of phantom experiences. Some cultures throughout history have treated dreams as more significant than waking life, as messages from the divine, glimpses into other realms, experiences as real and meaningful as anything that happens during the day. Modern Western culture tends to dismiss dreams as random noise, meaningless byproducts of neural housekeeping. But perhaps neither view is quite right. Maybe dreams are simply another mode of experience, neither more nor less real than waking life. just different. A different kind of consciousness, operating by different rules, serving different functions. And maybe the fact that we forget most of them is part of their purpose. They do their work on your psyche, integrate your experiences, process your emotions, and then they dissolve, leaving only subtle traces behind. People who are blind from birth don't see images in their dreams, but experience vivid dreams through sound, touch, and emotion. Dreams construct themselves from whatever sensory experiences are available to the dreamer. If you've never seen, your brain doesn't generate visual imagery in dreams. Instead, it creates rich soundscapes, tactile sensations, spatial awareness, emotional tones. The dreams are no less vivid, no less compelling, just built from different materials. This tells us something important about what dreams are. They're not recordings or playbacks of sensory input. They're constructions, simulations built by the brain using whatever tools it has available. The brain of someone born blind has never processed visual information, so it doesn't try to generate it in dreams. It works with what it knows: sound, touch, smell, the felt sense of movement and space. People who lose their sight later in life continue to have visual dreams, at least for a while. Their brains remember what seeing was like and can still generate visual experiences in sleep. But over time, as the visual memories fade and the brain reorganizes itself, dreams gradually become less visual and more oriented toward other senses. It's a reminder that your waking experience shapes your dreaming experience. Dreams draw from your lived reality, reassembling the elements of your life into new configurations. They're personal, specific to you, built from the unique collection of sensory experiences you've accumulated. The longest recorded period of REM sleep in a single episode is about 3 hours, occurring in infants. As adults, our REM periods rarely exceed 30-40 minutes at a time. We cycle in and out of REM throughout the night, visiting it briefly before returning to non-REM sleep. But infants sometimes stay in REM for extended periods, their little bodies still except for the rapid movements of their eyes beneath translucent eyelids. 3 hours is a long time to spend in that active, metabolically demanding state. What could an infant possibly be dreaming about for 3 hours? They have so little experience to draw from. They've seen faces, felt sensations, heard sounds, but they have no language yet, no coherent narrative structure, no sense of story or sequence. Perhaps infant REM sleep isn't really about dreaming in the way adults experience it. Perhaps it's more about brain development, creating and strengthening neural connections, establishing the basic wiring that will later support more complex cognition. The brain might be running programs, testing circuits, building the infrastructure of consciousness. Or perhaps infants do dream in some fundamental way we can't understand. Pure sensation without interpretation, pure experience without narrative, a kind of consciousness we've all forgotten because it existed before memory, before language, before the self. Your prefrontal cortex, responsible for logic and self-awareness, becomes less active during dreams, which explains why bizarre dream events seem normal while you're experiencing them. In dreams, you temporarily lose your capacity for critical thinking. You accept impossibilities without question. You see your childhood home combined with your current workplace and don't find it strange. You talk to people who've been dead for years and don't realize anything is wrong. You fly or teleport or suddenly find yourself naked in public, and instead of thinking, "This can't be real," you just go with it. This happens because the parts of your brain that would normally question reality, that would notice logical contradictions and recognize impossibilities, are running at reduced capacity. Your frontal lobes, the seat of executive function and rational analysis, are partially offline. You're experiencing the world, the dream world, without the filter of critical reasoning. It's only upon waking, when your prefrontal cortex comes back online, that you suddenly realize how absurd the dream was. The same events that seemed perfectly reasonable moments ago now appear obviously impossible. Your rational mind returns and immediately spots all the inconsistencies that your dreaming mind accepted without hesitation. This suspension of critical thinking might serve a purpose. It might allow your brain to make unusual associations, to connect ideas that would normally seem unrelated, to explore possibilities that your waking mind would immediately dismiss. Dreams might be a space for creativity precisely because they're free from the constraints of logic. The hippocampus, which forms new memories during the day, replays experiences during sleep to consolidate them into long-term storage. Your hippocampus is like a temporary holding area for new information. When you learn something new or experience something memorable during the day, it gets encoded in the hippocampus first. But the hippocampus has limited capacity. It can't hold everything forever. So during sleep, it replays those experiences, sending them out to the cortex for more permanent storage. Scientists have actually recorded this replay happening. They've monitored the activity of individual neurons in rats running through mazes, then watched those same neurons fire in the same patterns during subsequent sleep, but much faster, like a time-lapse replay. The rat's brain is literally reliving the experience of running the maze, processing it, transferring it into long-term memory. Humans do this too. Your brain creates highlight reels of your day, playing back important moments in compressed form while you sleep. This is how experiences become memories that last. Without sleep, the transfer doesn't happen efficiently. The memories remain fragile, more easily forgotten, less integrated into your broader knowledge. This is one reason why pulling an all-nighter before an exam is counterproductive. You might successfully cram information into your hippocampus through sheer repetition, but without sleep, that information won't consolidate properly. It'll be harder to recall, easier to confuse, less accessible when you actually need it. Sleep strengthens important memories while allowing irrelevant information to fade, a process called synaptic homeostasis. Your brain can't remember everything. If it tried, you'd be overwhelmed by trivial details. What you had for lunch 3 Tuesdays ago, the face of every person you passed on the street last week, the color of every car in the parking lot. Your brain needs to be selective, keeping what matters and discarding what doesn't. Sleep is when this sorting happens. During the day, learning and experience create new synaptic connections, physical changes in how neurons communicate with each other. But if all those connections were strengthened and preserved, your brain would become cluttered, inefficient, unable to distinguish signal from noise. Synaptic homeostasis is the idea that sleep scales back your synaptic connections, weakening the ones that represent unimportant information while preserving and strengthening the ones that matter. It's like pruning a garden. removing the weak growth so the strong plants can flourish. When you wake up, your brain is leaner, more focused. The irrelevant details have faded. The important information stands out more clearly. Sleep has organized your mental landscape, creating hierarchy and structure from the chaos of daily experience. Learning a new skill creates weak neural connections, but sleep stabilizes and strengthens these connections. Sleep on it is actually excellent scientific advice for mastering anything new. When you first learn a skill, whether it's a tennis serve, a piano piece, or a mathematical concept, you're creating tentative pathways in your brain. The neurons involved are making new connections, but those connections are fragile, uncertain, easily disrupted. Sleep solidifies those connections. It runs the patterns again and again, strengthening the relevant pathways, making the skill more automatic, more fluent. Musicians who practice a piece and then sleep show more improvement than musicians who practice and stay awake for an equivalent time. Athletes who train and then rest improve more than those who train continuously. The improvement happens offline while you're unconscious. Your brain is rehearsing without your awareness, running through the motor sequences or cognitive patterns, making them smoother, faster, more precise. You go to sleep struggling with something and wake up better at it, even though you didn't practice while asleep. It feels almost like magic, but it's just your brain doing what it's designed to do. Sleep isn't a pause in learning, it's an essential phase of learning. The practice matters, but so does the rest afterward. They work together, waking effort and sleeping, consolidation to build mastery. Your brain can solve problems during sleep that stumped you while awake, a phenomenon that's been documented in scientific studies. There are famous stories of scientists and artists receiving insights in dreams. The chemist Auguste Kekulé supposedly discovered the ring structure of benzene after dreaming of a snake eating its own tail. Paul McCartney claimed the melody for Yesterday came to him in a dream. These might be apocryphal or exaggerated, but they point to something real. Studies have shown that sleep, particularly REM sleep, can enhance creative problem solving. People given a problem to solve before sleep sometimes wake up with solutions they couldn't find while awake. The sleeping brain seems capable of making connections that the waking brain misses, seeing relationships between ideas that conscious thinking overlooks. This might happen because sleep loosens the constraints of logical thinking. Your dreaming mind isn't bound by conventional associations. It can combine elements in unusual ways, explore unlikely possibilities, stumble onto solutions that would have seemed too strange or illogical to consider while awake. It's not that sleep makes you smarter, exactly. It's that sleep allows your brain to approach problems from different angles, using different cognitive strategies than waking thought. Sometimes, the unconventional approach finds what the conventional approach missed. The brain's default mode network, active when you're daydreaming, is also active during REM sleep. The default mode network is a set of brain regions that activate when you're not focused on the external world. When you're staring out a window, lost in thought, when you're daydreaming in a boring meeting, when your mind wanders during a long drive. This network seems to be involved in self-reflection, autobiographical memory, imagining the future, and thinking about other people's mental states. During REM sleep, this same network lights up. your brain is turned inward, disconnected from external input, generating experiences from memory and imagination. In a sense, REM sleep might be like extended, intensified daydreaming, your mind wandering without the constraints or interruptions of waking life. This raises interesting questions about the relationship between dreaming and daydreaming, between sleep and wakeful mind wandering. They might not be as different as they seem. They might represent points on a continuum of internally generated experience, with daydreaming on one end and vivid REM dreams on the other. Both states involve reduced engagement with external reality and increased focus on internal mental content. Both can be creative, associative, emotionally rich. The main difference is that during REM sleep, you're fully unconscious and your body is paralyzed, while during daydreaming, you remain somewhat aware of your surroundings and can snap back to attention if needed. During sleep, neurons fire in synchronized waves that spread across the cortex like ripples on a pond. If you could watch your brain sleeping from above, with some way of seeing neural activity directly, you'd see waves of coordinated firing spreading across the surface. First, one region would light up, then the adjacent region, then the next, creating expanding patterns of activity that move across your cortex in organized sequences. This coordinated activity may help different brain regions communicate and integrate information. When neurons fire together in waves, it creates opportunities for different areas to synchronize their activity, to share information, to coordinate their functions. The visual cortex can talk to the memory systems. The emotional centers can communicate with the reasoning centers. These waves are most prominent during deep sleep, when your brain is running its slowest rhythms. The waves are large, coordinated, involving millions of neurons firing together. It's a kind of mass synchronization that rarely happens during waking life, when different brain regions are usually doing different things, responding to different stimuli, operating somewhat independently. Some scientists think these synchronized waves might be like a choir. Individual neurons are the voices, and the waves coordinate them into harmony. During waking life, the neurons sing solo or in small groups. During deep sleep, they all join together in a massive coordinated performance. Your circadian rhythm is controlled by a cluster of about 20,000 neurons called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, located just above where your optic nerves cross. 20,000 neurons. In the grand scheme of things, in a brain containing roughly 86 billion neurons, that's almost nothing. A tiny cluster of cells, smaller than a grain of rice, tucked away in the deepest part of your brain. And yet this minuscule structure acts as your master clock, orchestrating the timing of sleep, hunger, body temperature, hormone release, and countless other physiological rhythms. The suprachiasmatic nucleus sits right above the optic chiasm, the point where the optic nerves from your eyes cross before going deeper into the brain. This positioning isn't accidental. The clock needs to know about light, needs to receive information about whether it's day or night, so it can synchronize your internal rhythms with the external world. Light is the primary signal that sets your biological clock. Without this tiny cluster of neurons, your sleep-wake cycle would drift. You'd lose synchronization with the 24-hour day. Your body wouldn't know when to be alert and when to rest. Every physiological process that operates on a daily rhythm would become disorganized, unsynchronized, chaotic. It's humbling in a way. So much of your daily experience, when you feel hungry, when you feel sleepy, when your body temperature peaks and falls, is controlled by this microscopic region you'll never see, never feel, never directly interact with. It runs quietly in the background, keeping time, maintaining order. Even in complete darkness, without any time cues, humans maintain a sleep-wake cycle that averages about 24.2 hours. Scientists discovered this through isolation experiments. They put people in environments without clocks, without windows, without any way to tell what time it was. No sunrise, no sunset, no schedules, just people living in timeless darkness, sleeping and waking whenever they felt like it. And a pattern emerged. People didn't sleep randomly. They maintained a rhythm, a cycle that was remarkably consistent, about 24 hours and 12 minutes on average. Some people ran a bit faster, some a bit slower, but everyone had a period close to 24 hours. The rhythm was internal, generated by the body itself, independent of external cues. This is what circadian means, from Latin circa diem, meaning about a day. Your body has an internal sense of time that approximates, but doesn't exactly match, the Earth's rotation. You're running on a biological clock that's slightly out of sync with the solar day. In normal life, this small mismatch doesn't matter because you have Zeitgebers, time givers, that reset your clock daily. Light is the most powerful one. When light hits your eyes in the morning, it signals to your suprachiasmatic nucleus. This is the start of the day. Reset the clock. Without this daily reset, your 24.2-hour rhythm would gradually drift later and later, moving out of phase with the outside world. Blue light from screens suppresses melatonin production more than any other wavelength of light. Your brain interprets blue light as daylight, as the signal that it's time to be awake and alert. This made perfect sense for most of human history, when the main source of blue light was the sky. Blue light meant daytime. Absence of blue light meant night was falling. But now we have screens, phones, tablets, computers, televisions, all emitting significant amounts of blue light. And we use these screens at night, in the hours before bed, sometimes right up until the moment we try to sleep. We're essentially telling our brains that it's still daytime, that it's not yet time to prepare for sleep. Melatonin is the hormone that signals nighttime to your body. As darkness falls, your pineal gland begins secreting melatonin into your bloodstream. Melatonin doesn't force you to sleep. It's not a sedative, but it prepares you for sleep, lowering your body temperature, reducing your alertness, creating the physiological conditions that make sleep possible. Blue light suppresses this melatonin release. It tells your pineal gland, wait, don't start the nighttime sequence yet. It's still light outside. So melatonin production gets delayed. Your body doesn't begin preparing for sleep when it normally would. And when you finally put the screen away and try to sleep, you might find yourself lying awake, your brain still thinking it's earlier than it really is. Melatonin doesn't make you sleep. It signals to your body that it's nighttime and prepares you for sleep. Think of melatonin as a biological sunset, dimming your alertness rather than forcing unconsciousness. It's a messenger, carrying information through your body. Evening is here. Night is approaching. Begin the preparations. This is why melatonin supplements, while sometimes helpful, aren't sleeping pills. Taking melatonin doesn't guarantee you'll fall asleep. It just provides the signal that sleep should become possible soon. Your body still has to do the actual work of transitioning to sleep, and many other factors can interfere with that transition. Stress, caffeine, noise, discomfort, racing thoughts. Melatonin levels rise in the evening, peak in the middle of the night around 2 to 4 a.m., and then gradually fall as morning approaches. This nightly curve of melatonin helps coordinate all the other physiological changes that support sleep. The drop in body temperature, the reduction in cortisol, the shift in metabolic processes. When this melatonin rhythm gets disrupted through jet lag, shift work, or excessive evening light exposure, sleep becomes difficult because your body's timing system has been confused. The sunset signal is coming at the wrong time, or not coming at all, and your physiology doesn't know when to prepare for sleep. Your body produces cortisol in a daily rhythm, with levels rising before you wake to help mobilize energy for the day ahead. Cortisol has gotten a bad reputation as the stress hormone, but it's actually essential for normal functioning. It helps regulate blood sugar, blood pressure, immune function, and energy metabolism, and it rises and falls on a precise daily schedule, coordinated by your circadian system. In the early morning hours, while you're still asleep, your cortisol levels begin to climb. This cortisol awakening response peaks around 30 minutes after you wake up, providing a natural energy boost to help you transition from sleep to wakefulness. It's your body's way of mobilizing resources, preparing you to engage with the day. This is why you can sometimes wake up just before your alarm goes off. Your body knows, through its internal clock, that morning is approaching. It begins the cortisol rise, which gradually increases your alertness even while you're still asleep. You might surface from sleep naturally, right around the time you intended to wake, because your physiology was already preparing for waking. Throughout the day, cortisol levels gradually decline, falling to their lowest point late in the evening. This daily cortisol rhythm works in coordination with the melatonin rhythm. As cortisol falls in the evening, melatonin rises, creating the biological conditions for sleep. As melatonin falls in the morning, cortisol rises, creating the conditions for wakefulness. They're two halves of a coordinated system. Jet lag happens because your circadian rhythm adjusts at a rate of roughly 1 hour per day. Traveling across 6 time zones means your body clock will be out of sync for nearly a week. Your suprachiasmatic nucleus doesn't instantly reset when you arrive in a new time zone. It changes gradually, shifting by about an hour each day as it recalibrates to the new light-dark cycle. During those adjustment days, your internal time doesn't match external time. Your body thinks it's 3 a.m. when the clock says 9 a.m. You're trying to sleep when your body thinks you should be awake. You're trying to stay alert when your body thinks you should be sleeping. Everything feels wrong because your internal rhythms are still synchronized to the old time zone. The direction of travel matters too. Most people find it easier to delay their sleep, to stay up later, than to advance it. So westward travel, where you gain time, is generally easier than eastward travel, where you lose time. Flying from New York to Los Angeles means you can stay up 3 hours later, which most people can do without too much difficulty. But flying from Los Angeles to New York means you need to fall asleep 3 hours earlier, which is much harder. Light exposure can speed up the adjustment process. Getting bright light in the morning helps shift your clock earlier. Avoiding light in the evening helps shift it later. But there's still a limit to how fast your circadian system can change. Evolution built it to be stable, resistant to random fluctuations, and that stability is what makes jet lag inevitable. Some people are genetically predisposed to be morning larks, while others are night owls, differences encoded in your DNA. Your chronotype, your natural preference for sleeping and waking times, is as much a biological reality as your height. It's influenced by genetics, by variations in the genes that control your circadian clock. Some people have genetic variants that make their circadian period shorter, causing them to naturally wake earlier. Others have variants that make it longer, causing them to naturally stay up later. Morning larks feel alert and energetic early in the day. They wake up naturally at dawn, perform their best work in the morning hours, and feel ready for sleep by 9 or 10 p.m. Night owls feel sluggish and foggy in the morning. They don't fully wake up until late morning or afternoon, hit their peak performance in the evening, and don't feel sleepy until midnight or later. Neither type is better or worse. They're just different, shaped by genetic variation that probably served some evolutionary purpose. Maybe having different chronotypes in a group meant someone was always alert. Early risers keeping watch at dawn, night owls staying vigilant in the evening. A community of mixed chronotypes would be harder for predators to catch completely off guard. But modern society tends to favor morning larks. Work often starts at 8 or 9 a.m., regardless of your chronotype. Night owls are forced to wake up when their bodies want to sleep, and they're judged as lazy or undisciplined for struggling with early mornings. But it's not a character flaw. It's biology, fighting against a schedule that doesn't match its internal timing. Teenagers' circadian rhythms naturally shift later during puberty, making early school start times biologically inappropriate. Adolescence brings many changes, and one of them is a delay in circadian phase. The same teenager who woke easily at 7 a.m. as a child might struggle to wake before 9 a.m. once puberty begins. Their melatonin release shifts later. Their natural sleep time shifts later. Their entire circadian system runs on a delayed schedule compared to children and adults. This isn't laziness or rebellion. It's a documented biological shift that occurs across cultures, across species, in every mammal that's been studied. Something about sexual maturation delays the circadian clock. Asking a teenager to be alert and learning at 8 a.m. is like asking an adult to be productive and focused at 5 or 6 a.m. It's biologically inappropriate. The teenager's brain hasn't fully woken up yet. Their cortisol hasn't peaked. They're operating in a physiological state similar to sleep inertia, trying to think clearly while their body insists it should still be sleeping. Some school districts have recognized this and pushed back start times, and the results are striking. Teenagers sleep more. Their grades improve. Car accident rates among teen drivers decrease. Depression and anxiety symptoms reduce, all from simply allowing teenagers to start school at a time that better matches their biology. The shift reverses in adulthood. By the time people reach their 20s, their circadian rhythms gradually advance again, returning to earlier sleep and wake times. But during adolescence, the delay is powerful and consistent, a biological reality that schools often ignore. Dolphins and some whales sleep with only half their brain at a time. allowing them to surface for air while sleeping. Imagine being able to put half your brain to sleep while the other half stays awake. One hemisphere resting while the other maintains consciousness, monitors the environment, keeps you breathing. This is called unihemispheric sleep, and it's how dolphins solve the problem of needing to sleep while also needing to breathe air. A dolphin can't fall into deep, unconscious sleep the way land mammals do. If both hemispheres shut down at once, the dolphin would sink and potentially drown. So instead, the hemispheres take turns. The left hemisphere sleeps while the right stays awake, maintaining just enough consciousness to swim to the surface and breathe. Then they switch. The right hemisphere sleeps while the left takes over. Even the dolphin's eyes reflect this divided sleep. The eye opposite to the sleeping hemisphere closes, while the eye on the wakeful side stays open, keeping watch. The animal is simultaneously asleep and awake, resting and vigilant, a creature living in two states at once. Humans can't do this. Our brains seem to require whole brain sleep, both hemispheres shutting down together in synchronized patterns. We've evolved to sleep on land, in safe places, where we can afford to be completely unconscious for hours. Dolphins evolved to sleep in the ocean, where unconsciousness means death, so they found another way. Birds can also engage in unihemispheric sleep, which allows migrating birds to sleep while flying. Some birds fly for months without landing. They cross oceans, traverse continents, riding air currents through the stratosphere. And somehow, while flying thousands of miles, they manage to sleep. They do it the same way dolphins do, one hemisphere at a time. A bird can put half its brain to sleep while the other half maintains flight control. One eye closes, the other stays open. Half the brain rests, the other half keeps the wings beating, adjusts for wind currents, maintains altitude and direction. Researchers have documented this by attaching tiny EEG sensors to migratory birds and recording their brain activity during long flights. The data shows clear patterns of unihemispheric sleep. One hemisphere producing slow waves, characteristic of deep sleep, while the other hemisphere shows waking patterns. The birds don't get as much sleep as they would on land, and the sleep isn't as deep. They're sacrificing sleep quality for the ability to keep flying. But even this fractional, half-brained sleep seems to be enough to sustain them through journeys of thousands of miles. It makes you wonder about the nature of consciousness and rest. If you can be half asleep and half awake simultaneously, which half is really you? Are you asleep or awake? Both, neither. The boundaries we normally think are clear become fuzzy when sleep and wakefulness can coexist in the same brain. Giraffes sleep only about 30 minutes to 2 hours per day in short bursts, making them one of the shortest sleeping mammals. Being tall and vulnerable means they can't afford long periods of unconsciousness. A giraffe lying down is exposed, awkward, slow to stand. In the wild, where lions and hyenas hunt at night, every minute spent sleeping is a minute of danger. So giraffes have evolved to minimize sleep. They take brief naps throughout the day and night, often standing up, their long necks curved back so their heads rest on their hindquarters. Sometimes they lie down for deeper sleep, but rarely for more than a few minutes at a time. They're constantly vigilant, constantly ready to flee. And yet, even giraffes need REM sleep. Despite the risk, despite the vulnerability, they occasionally enter that deep, paralyzed state where the brain is active but the body is still. They can't skip it entirely. Even for an animal where sleep is dangerous, sleep remains necessary. This tells us something about how essential sleep must be. If evolution could eliminate the need for sleep, it would have done so for giraffes. The survival advantage would be enormous. Imagine never needing to lie down, never needing to lower your guard, but it hasn't happened. Giraffes still sleep, however briefly, because some fundamental aspect of biology requires it. The fact that they've minimized sleep as much as possible, but not eliminated, it entirely suggests there's a floor below which sleep cannot be reduced. Some minimum amount that every animal needs to maintain basic physiological and neural function. Brown bats sleep up to 20 hours per day, spending most of their lives in slumber. At the opposite end of the spectrum from giraffes are bats, creatures that have apparently decided sleep is more important than almost anything else. A brown bat might be awake for only 4 hours out of every 24, spending the rest hanging upside down in darkness, deeply asleep. This extreme sleep seems to be related to their high metabolism and nocturnal hunting schedule. Bats burn energy at an incredible rate when they're active, flying through the night catching insects with echolocation. That level of activity is unsustainable for long periods, so they compensate by sleeping extensively during the day. Their roosting sites, caves, attics, hollow trees, provide safety during these long sleep periods. Hanging upside down in darkness, surrounded by thousands of other sleeping bats, they're relatively protected from predators. They can afford to sleep deeply and for long durations because they've found environments where unconsciousness isn't immediately dangerous. The contrast between giraffes and bats illustrates how sleep duration is shaped by ecological pressures. Giraffes, vulnerable and exposed, sleep as little as possible. Bats, hidden and protected, sleep as much as they apparently need. Both are mammals, both have brains that require sleep, but their circumstances have driven them to opposite extremes. Sea otters hold hands while sleeping to keep from drifting apart in ocean currents. They also wrap themselves in kelp to anchor in place, creating floating beds in the sea. An otter will find a strand of kelp, wrap it around their body several times, and then lie on their back at the surface, securely tethered to the kelp forest below. Sometimes they sleep alone, solitary figures floating in the waves, but often they sleep in groups called rafts, dozens or even hundreds of otters clustered together. And to keep the raft intact, to prevent individuals from drifting away during sleep, they hold hands, literally. One otter extends a paw to another, linking together in chains or clusters. A living network of sleeping animals maintaining connection, even in unconsciousness. It's one of those behaviors that seems almost impossibly endearing, but it serves a practical purpose. Ocean currents can carry a sleeping otter far from their feeding grounds or their social group. By holding hands, they ensure they wake up together in the same place, still part of their community. There's something profound in this image. Sleeping creatures maintaining connection in the dark, reaching out to each other even while unconscious, ensuring that when they wake, they won't be alone. It's a reminder that sleep, for many species, isn't a solitary activity. It's social, communal, something that happens in the context of relationships. Some animals, like bears during hibernation, can go months without urinating or defecating because their metabolism slows so dramatically. Hibernation is a state beyond normal sleep, closer to suspended animation. A hibernating bear's heart rate drops from 40-50 beats per minute to just 8 to 10. Their body temperature falls. Their metabolism slows to a fraction of its normal rate. They're not just sleeping. They're existing in a profoundly altered physiological state. During this time, they don't eat, don't drink, don't eliminate waste. Their bodies recycle everything. Urea that would normally be excreted in urine is instead broken down and reused to build proteins. Water is conserved and recirculated. The bear essentially runs on its fat reserves, burning stored energy while minimizing all other metabolic processes. They can maintain this state for 5 to 7 months, emerging in spring thinner but otherwise healthy. It's a kind of biological time travel, entering the den in fall and exiting in spring with almost no awareness of the months that passed. Hibernation isn't the same as sleep, though sleep is part of it. Hibernating animals do cycle through sleep stages, but at a much slower rate and with long periods of torpor, a state that's neither quite sleep nor quite wakefulness. It's a third state, unique and strange, that allows survival through seasons when food is scarce and temperatures are deadly. Fruit flies have a gene called period that regulates their sleep-wake cycle. The same gene exists in humans and controls our circadian rhythms. This discovery won the 2017 Nobel Prize and showed that sleep mechanisms are ancient and conserved across species. The same basic genetic machinery that controls sleep in a fruit fly controls sleep in humans. We are separated by hundreds of millions of years of evolution, vastly different in size and complexity, and yet we use the same molecular clock. The period gene produces a protein that accumulates during the day and breaks down during the night. This cycling protein helps drive the daily rhythm of activity and rest. In flies, in mice, in humans, the mechanism is fundamentally the same. This deep conservation suggests that circadian rhythms evolved very early in the history of life, probably in single-celled organisms responding to the day-night cycle created by Earth's rotation. As life became more complex, this basic timing mechanism was preserved and elaborated upon, but never fundamentally redesigned. It's humbling to realize that when you feel sleepy in the evening, you're experiencing the result of molecular processes that are billions of years old, processes that were already ancient when the first animals crawled onto land. Your sleep is connected to the sleep of every creature that sleeps, all of us running variations on the same ancient theme. Sharks must keep swimming even while sleeping to maintain water flow over their gills. They sleep while moving. Some shark species have been observed sleep swimming, maintaining continuous motion while showing reduced brain activity and decreased responsiveness to stimuli. They're not fully awake, but they're not completely asleep either. They're in some intermediate state, conscious enough to swim but not fully aware. Other sharks solve the problem differently. Species like nurse sharks and reef sharks can pump water over their gills while stationary, so they can afford to rest on the ocean floor. But pelagic sharks, the ones that roam the open ocean, don't have this ability. If they stop swimming, they stop breathing. So they've evolved to sleep while moving, reducing their neural activity while maintaining the basic motor patterns that keep them swimming forward. It's another variation on the theme we've been exploring. different species solving the universal problem of sleep in different ways based on their specific constraints. Dolphins sleep one hemisphere at a time. Birds do the same while flying. Sharks sleep while swimming. Each solution is unique, but the need for sleep remains constant. Elephants in the wild sleep only about 2 hours per night, often while standing, though they lie down for REM sleep. They're among the shortest sleeping land mammals, possibly because finding enough food takes so much time. An adult elephant needs to consume hundreds of pounds of vegetation every day. Spending long hours sleeping would mean less time foraging, which could mean starvation. So elephants have compressed their sleep to the minimum they can manage. They sleep in short bursts, mostly while standing, using their legs to lock their joints so they don't fall. But they do need to lie down for REM sleep. The paralysis of REM atonia makes standing impossible. So a few times per week, they'll lie on their sides for 30 or 40 minutes of deeper sleep. Studies of wild elephants using activity trackers have revealed something else surprising. Sometimes they don't sleep at all. There are nights when elephants remain awake for the entire 24-hour period, possibly in response to threats or disturbances. They can apparently go without sleep for a night or two without major consequences, though they do make up for it later. This ability to occasionally skip sleep entirely is rare among mammals. Most species show severe cognitive and physiological impairment after just one sleepless night. But elephants, with their already minimal sleep requirements, seem to have evolved tolerance for occasional total sleep deprivation. Sleep evolved at least 450 million years ago, before the evolutionary split between vertebrates and invertebrates. Sleep is older than backbones, older than legs, suggesting it serves a truly fundamental purpose. When the first fish were evolving, when life was just beginning to colonize land, when the ancestor of all vertebrates was still a primitive, jawless creature swimming in ancient oceans, even then, sleep existed. We know this because sleep is present in animals on both sides of the major evolutionary splits. Vertebrates sleep, invertebrates sleep. Animals with radically different nervous systems, different brain structures, different body plans, they all sleep. The only way to explain this universality is to conclude that sleep evolved before these lineages diverged, that it's an ancient feature of animal life. This deep evolutionary history means sleep isn't a recent innovation or a luxury feature. It's not something that complex brains developed to handle information overload. It's fundamental, primitive, essential. Some of the earliest animals capable of anything we might call behavior were already sleeping. Whatever sleep does, whatever function it serves, it must be so important that hundreds of millions of years of evolution have never found a way to eliminate it. Every innovation in nervous system design, every new environment colonized, every predator-prey relationship developed, through all of it, sleep has persisted. No one has definitively answered why we need to sleep, despite it being one of the most universal biological functions. It's one of the great unsolved mysteries in biology. We know sleep is essential. Deprive an animal of sleep long enough, and it will die. We know sleep serves multiple functions: memory consolidation, cellular repair, metabolic regulation, waste clearance. We know what happens during sleep: the stages, the cycles, the neural patterns, the hormonal changes. But we don't know why sleep takes the form it does. Why unconsciousness? Why couldn't these functions be performed while awake? Why do we need to lie down, close our eyes, disconnect from the environment, and become vulnerable for hours every day? Some scientists believe there isn't one answer because there isn't one function. Sleep might be solving multiple problems simultaneously, and the specific form sleep takes is the only way to address all of them at once. Maybe you need to be unconscious for the glymphatic system to work efficiently. Maybe you need to disconnect from external input for certain types of memory processing. Maybe you need to shut down voluntary movement for cellular repair to happen optimally. Or maybe there's still some fundamental insight we're missing, some deep principle about how nervous systems work that would make sleep's necessity obvious, if only we understood it. We're like people trying to understand why computers need to reboot without understanding what a computer is. We see the phenomenon, we document its effects, but the underlying reason remains elusive. The leading theory is that sleep serves multiple purposes: memory consolidation, cellular repair, metabolic regulation, and toxin clearance. Think of sleep as a factory running a different shift at night, handling maintenance tasks that can't happen during production hours. During the day, your brain is engaged with the external world, perceiving, responding, learning, acting. It's running at full capacity, generating waste products, forming tentative memories, making decisions, regulating your body. But some types of work can't happen while all that's going on. Memory consolidation requires replaying experiences without interference from new experiences. Cellular repair requires reduced metabolic demand so resources can be redirected. Waste clearance requires brain cells to shrink so fluid can flow between them. These processes need the brain to be offline, or at least operating in a very different mode. Sleep provides that different mode. It creates a protected time when the brain can turn inward, when maintenance can proceed without interruption, when the system can reorganize itself. It's not that these functions couldn't theoretically happen while awake. It's that they happen much more efficiently during sleep, when competing demands are reduced. This multifunction explanation feels satisfying because it matches the complexity of what we observe. Sleep isn't one thing. It's multiple things happening in coordination. Different sleep stages emphasize different functions. The ratio of stages changes across development as needs change. The whole system is adaptive, flexible, responding to current demands. But it's still just a theory, a framework for organizing what we know. The fundamental question, why this specific solution, why unconsciousness, remains open. Evolution has never produced a sleepless animal, suggesting that staying awake 24/7 would require major biological redesign. Sleep is woven so deeply into life's fabric that eliminating it would require rebuilding the entire organism. It's not just one system or one process that depends on sleep. It's everything. Your metabolism, your immune function, your hormone regulation, your neural plasticity, your cellular repair mechanisms. All of these systems are built with the assumption that sleep will happen, that there will be daily periods of rest and restoration. Imagine trying to design a car that never needed to stop, not for fuel, not for oil changes, not for tire rotations, not for any maintenance. You couldn't just remove the gas tank and call it done. You'd need to fundamentally redesign how the engine works, how parts wear and replace themselves, how energy is stored and used. the entire vehicle would need to be reimagined from the ground up. The same appears to be true for biological organisms and sleep. You can't just delete sleep and expect everything else to keep working. Sleep is integrated into too many fundamental processes. To create a sleepless organism, you'd need to redesign metabolism so waste products don't accumulate, redesign the immune system so it doesn't need sleep-dependent consolidation, redesign memory systems so they don't require offline processing, redesign cellular repair so it can happen during activity. Evolution is a powerful optimizer. If there were a simple way to eliminate sleep while maintaining function, some lineage somewhere would have found it by now. The fact that no animal has ever evolved to skip sleep entirely tells us it's not a simple problem. It might not even be a solvable problem given the constraints of carbon-based biology. Some scientists believe sleep originally evolved as a way to conserve energy during times when being awake provided no advantage. If you can't hunt or forage at night anyway, better to shut down and save energy. This is called the adaptive inactivity theory, and it suggests sleep started as a behavior rather than a biological necessity. Early animals might have evolved to rest during periods when activity was inefficient or dangerous, and over time, this rest period became more than just behavioral. It became a physiological state that the body depended on. Think of nocturnal animals living in a world before artificial light. During the day, when predators are active and you can't see well, the safest strategy might be to hide and remain still, conserving energy. Over evolutionary time, this period of enforced inactivity could have been co-opted for other functions. Why waste this downtime? Use it for maintenance, for memory processing, for cellular repair. Gradually, these additional functions become integrated into the rest period. The rest period becomes less optional and more necessary. What started as adaptive inactivity transforms into something metabolically essential. The behavior becomes a biological requirement. This theory explains why sleep evolved in the first place, but it doesn't fully explain why sleep remains necessary today. Even animals that are active 24/7 in artificial laboratory conditions still need to sleep. The original adaptive reason might be gone, but sleep has become scaffolded into so many other systems that it can't be abandoned. The division of labor between REM and non-REM sleep suggests they evolved to serve different functions. REM sleep may have emerged later in evolutionary history, built on top of more ancient sleep patterns. Non-REM sleep appears to be older, more fundamental. Even animals with relatively simple nervous systems show states that resemble non-REM sleep, periods of reduced activity and responsiveness, with characteristic changes in neural patterns. REM sleep, with its vivid dreams and paradoxical brain activity, seems to be a more recent innovation, found primarily in mammals and birds. This suggests that as brains became more complex, a new form of sleep evolved to handle new types of processing that simpler brains didn't need. The two types of sleep have different electrical signatures, different effects on the body, different relationships to memory and learning. Non-REM sleep seems more focused on restoration and energy conservation, basic housekeeping that every brain needs. REM sleep seems more focused on integration and emotional processing, higher-level functions that only complex brains require. It's like your brain runs two different maintenance programs. The first program handles basic upkeep. cleaning, repairs, resource management. The second program handles more sophisticated tasks, reorganizing information, integrating experiences, processing emotions. You need both programs, but they can't run simultaneously, so they alternate throughout the night. After just 24 hours without sleep, cognitive impairment is equivalent to having a blood alcohol content of 0.10%, legally drunk in most places. Exhaustion hijacks your brain as effectively as alcohol, but somehow feels more socially acceptable. No one would let you drive with a BAC of 0.10%, but people routinely drive after pulling all-nighters, completely unaware that their impairment is just as severe. Your reaction times slow. Your judgment deteriorates. Your attention wavers. You make poor decisions, take unnecessary risks, fail to notice important details. And unlike with alcohol, where you might at least recognize you're impaired, sleep deprivation often comes with a false sense of competence. You feel tired, but you don't necessarily realize how badly your cognitive function has degraded. This is partly because sleep deprivation affects self-awareness. The parts of your brain that monitor your own performance and recognize errors are themselves impaired by lack of sleep. You become less capable of judging how incapable you've become. You think you're functioning reasonably well, while objective measures show significant deficits. After 48 hours without sleep, the impairment becomes even more severe. You might experience microsleeps, brief moments where your brain essentially shuts off for a few seconds without your awareness. You might hallucinate, seeing things that aren't there or misperceiving your environment. Your emotional regulation collapses. Small frustrations feel overwhelming. Simple tasks become insurmountably difficult. The world record for intentional sleep deprivation is 11 days, set in 1964 by a 17-year-old student named Randy Gardner. By the end, he experienced hallucinations, paranoia, and cognitive dysfunction, though he recovered fully after sleeping. The experiment was monitored by sleep researchers who documented the progressive deterioration of his mental state as the sleepless days accumulated. Early on, he became irritable and had trouble concentrating. By day 4, he was experiencing memory problems and having trouble with simple tasks. By day 7, his speech was slurred, and he was having difficulty forming coherent thoughts. By the final days, he was experiencing delusions. At one point, he became convinced he was a famous football player. And yet, remarkably, his basic physiological functions remained stable. His heart rate, blood pressure, and body temperature stayed within normal ranges. The damage was primarily neurological and cognitive, not systemic. This suggests that sleep deprivation's most immediate danger is to brain function, rather than to the body as a whole, though chronic sleep deprivation does eventually damage physical health as well. After the experiment ended, Randy slept for nearly 15 hours straight, then woke up essentially normal. His cognitive function returned. The hallucinations and paranoia vanished. He experienced no lasting effects from the 11 sleepless days, suggesting the brain has remarkable resilience and can recover from even extreme sleep deprivation if given the chance to rest. No one has officially attempted to break this record, since partly because sleep researchers now consider it unethical to deliberately deprive people of sleep for such extended periods. Chronic sleep deprivation increases the risk of diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular disease, and weakened immune function. Missing sleep doesn't just make you tired, it gradually destabilizes your entire physiology. Sleep is when your body regulates insulin sensitivity, manages hunger hormones, repairs blood vessels, and consolidates immune responses. Without adequate sleep, all of these regulatory systems begin to drift out of balance. People who chronically sleep less than 6 hours per night have significantly higher rates of type 2 diabetes. Sleep deprivation impairs your body's ability to process glucose and makes cells less responsive to insulin. Over time, this can lead to persistently elevated blood sugar and eventually diabetes. Sleep loss also disrupts the hormones that regulate hunger and satiety. Ghrelin, which stimulates appetite, increases. Leptin, which signals fullness, decreases. The result is that sleep-deprived people feel hungrier, eat more, and have particular cravings for high-calorie, high-carbohydrate foods. Combine this with decreased motivation to exercise because you're exhausted, and weight gain becomes almost inevitable. Cardiovascular effects are equally concerning. Chronic sleep deprivation increases inflammation, raises blood pressure, and accelerates atherosclerosis, the buildup of plaques in arteries. People who sleep less than 6 hours per night have a significantly increased risk of heart attack and stroke. And your immune system suffers. Sleep-deprived people are more susceptible to infections, produce fewer antibodies in response to vaccines, and have higher levels of inflammatory markers. Sleep is when your immune system does much of its most important work. And without adequate sleep, your defenses gradually weaken. Sleep deprivation impairs the formation of new memories, while paradoxically making negative memories more emotionally intense. Exhaustion can create a cognitive state where you can't remember good things, but can't forget bad things. It's a particularly cruel form of impairment. Your brain loses its ability to form new positive memories while simultaneously amplifying the emotional impact of negative experiences. This happens because sleep deprivation affects different memory systems in different ways. The hippocampus, which forms new declarative memories, becomes less active when you're sleep deprived. It struggles to encode new information. You experience things, but they don't stick. You're told important information, but you forget it almost immediately. Meanwhile, the amygdala, the brain's emotional center, becomes hyperactive in sleep-deprived people. It responds more strongly to negative stimuli, tagging negative experiences with intense emotional significance. And without adequate REM sleep to process and contextualize these emotions, they remain raw and overwhelming. This combination can create a downward spiral. You're experiencing more negative emotions and encoding them more strongly, while simultaneously struggling to remember anything positive or neutral. Your memory becomes skewed toward the negative, making the world seem darker and more threatening than it actually is. This is one reason sleep deprivation is so closely linked to depression and anxiety. When your brain can't form balanced memories, when every negative experience feels magnified while positive ones slip away, it becomes difficult to maintain emotional equilibrium. Microsleeps, brief 130-second lapses into sleep, occur involuntarily when you're severely sleep-deprived. Your brain essentially steals moments of sleep without your permission, which is terrifying if you're driving. One moment you're awake, the next moment you're gone. Not unconscious exactly, but not present either. Your eyes might remain open. You might even continue performing simple motor tasks, but your awareness has briefly vanished. These microsleeps are your brain's emergency response to extreme sleep pressure. When you've been awake too long, when sleep debt becomes critical, your brain stops waiting for you to lie down and close your eyes. It grabs sleep whenever it can, in whatever fragments are available. During a microsleep, you're essentially offline. You're not processing new information. You're not responding to changes in your environment. If a car ahead of you brakes, you won't notice. If a traffic light changes, you won't see it. You're temporarily absent from your own life. And the terrifying part is that you might not even realize it happened. Microsleeps can be so brief that you don't notice the gap in consciousness. You might feel like you've been continuously awake and aware, when in fact you've been blinking in and out of consciousness for several seconds at a time. This is why drowsy driving is so dangerous, arguably more dangerous than drunk driving in some ways. At least drunk drivers are continuously present, however impaired. Drowsy drivers are intermittently absent, completely offline for crucial seconds, and often unaware that anything is wrong. Some people have a rare genetic mutation that allows them to feel fully rested on just 4 to 6 hours of sleep per night. This short sleep gene affects only about 1–3% of the population. Most people claiming to thrive on little sleep are actually chronically sleep deprived. The mutation affects how efficiently the brain accomplishes sleep's essential functions, allowing these individuals to complete the necessary processes in less time. For the vast majority of people, sleeping only 4 or 5 hours per night leads to accumulating sleep debt, cognitive impairment, and health problems. They might function, caffeinating themselves through the day, pushing through fatigue, but they're not thriving. Their bodies are struggling, their brains are impaired, and the long-term consequences are building. But people with the short sleep gene are genuinely different. They sleep less, but they're not sleep deprived. Their sleep is more efficient. They cycle through sleep stages faster, consolidate memories more quickly, clear metabolic waste more effectively. They wake up naturally after 4 or 5 hours, feeling genuinely refreshed, not because they've trained themselves to function on less sleep, but because they genuinely need less. The existence of this mutation tells us something important. The amount of sleep you need is biological, not a choice. If you don't have the genetic variant, no amount of discipline or willpower will allow you to truly thrive on minimal sleep. You might force yourself to function on less, but your body will pay the price. Fatal familial insomnia is an extremely rare prion disease that progressively destroys the ability to sleep, eventually leading to death. It's one of the few conditions that demonstrate sleep is not optional. The body cannot survive indefinitely without it. The disease typically begins in middle age with increasing difficulty falling asleep. Over months, the insomnia becomes total and permanent. The person loses the ability to sleep entirely, not for one night or even 1 week, but forever. As the disease progresses, the effects are devastating. Hallucinations, panic attacks, rapid weight loss, dementia. The body and brain progressively deteriorate without the restoration that sleep provides. No amount of rest helps. Lying down brings no relief. The person remains conscious, trapped in wakefulness that becomes increasingly nightmarish. Death usually occurs within 12 to 18 months of symptom onset. The cause of death is listed as the prion disease itself, But effectively, it's the absence of sleep that kills. Without sleep, the body cannot maintain itself. Systems that depend on sleep's restorative functions begin to fail. The person essentially wastes away, their physiology collapsing from lack of the maintenance that only sleep provides. Fatal familial insomnia is mercifully rare. Only a few dozen families worldwide carry the mutation, but its existence serves as a grim demonstration of how essential sleep is. You can survive weeks without food, days without water, but without sleep, survival is measured in months at most. Sleep sorts memories by emotional significance, strengthening important emotional experiences while weakening neutral ones. This is why traumatic memories can become particularly strong. They're tagged as significant and reinforced during sleep. Your brain doesn't strengthen all memories equally. It evaluates them, sorts them by importance, and allocates its limited consolidation resources accordingly. Emotional experiences get priority. When something happens that triggers a strong emotional response, fear, joy, surprise, grief, your amygdala tags that experience as important. During subsequent sleep, particularly during REM sleep, your brain preferentially processes these emotionally significant memories. It replays them, integrates them with existing knowledge, strengthens the neural connections that encode them. Meanwhile, neutral experiences, things that happened but carried no emotional weight, are allowed to fade. Your brain doesn't waste resources preserving every mundane detail. What you ate for lunch last Tuesday, the faces of strangers you passed on the street, the color of a car in a parking lot. These fade naturally because your brain has deemed them unimportant. This emotional sorting is usually adaptive. You need to remember things that mattered, dangers you encountered, pleasures you experienced, lessons you learned. You don't need to remember every neutral moment, but this same mechanism can become maladaptive after trauma. The emotional tagging system marks the traumatic experience as extremely important, and sleep dutifully strengthens it, making the memory vivid and intrusive. This is why sleep disturbance is so common after trauma. The brain is trying to process an overwhelming experience, but the normal consolidation process can actually make things worse in the short term, creating memories that are too strong, too vivid, too accessible. The phrase "sleep on it" has scientific backing. People often wake up with clearer perspectives on difficult decisions. Sleep provides emotional distance and allows the brain to integrate information unconsciously. When you're in the middle of a difficult decision, you're often too close to it, too emotionally invested, too caught up in the immediate details. You can't see the broader context or consider all the implications. Sleep creates separation. Hours pass while you're unconscious. Your emotional arousal decreases. Your brain processes the information in the background, making connections you couldn't see while actively thinking about the problem. The prefrontal cortex integrates the decision with your broader goals and values, weighing options in ways that conscious deliberation struggles to accomplish. People given complex problems before sleep often wake up with solutions or insights they couldn't achieve through continued waking effort. It's not that sleep magically solves problems. It's that sleep allows your brain to work on problems differently, using modes of processing that aren't available during focused, conscious thought. This is particularly true for decisions that involve emotional or value-based considerations. Sleep helps regulate emotions, reducing the intensity of immediate reactions and allowing more balanced evaluation. A decision that seemed impossible in the evening might seem clearer in the morning, not because anything external has changed, but because your internal state has shifted. Musicians who practice a piece before sleep show more improvement than those who practice and stay awake for the same duration. Your brain rehearses motor skills during sleep, essentially practicing without your conscious involvement. After you practice a piano piece, a tennis serve, or any complex motor skill, your brain doesn't simply store a recording of what you did. During sleep, it actively replays the motor sequences, strengthening the neural pathways, smoothing out the movements, making them more automatic. Studies using brain imaging have shown that the motor cortex activates during sleep in patterns that mirror those used during practice. If you spent your evening practicing a particular finger pattern on the piano, that same pattern of neural activation appears during your sleep. Your brain is running the program again and again, optimizing it, making it more efficient. This offline practice is why you sometimes wake up better at something than you were when you went to sleep. You struggled with a passage in the evening, but in the morning it flows more easily. Your fingers seem to remember what to do. The improvement feels mysterious, but it's just your sleeping brain doing what it evolved to do: consolidating skills, strengthening connections, making learned behaviors more automatic. Athletes know this intuitively, even if they don't know the neuroscience. Recovery isn't just about letting muscles rest. It's about letting the brain consolidate the motor patterns, integrate the skills, build the neural infrastructure that supports performance. Sleep deprivation impairs the hippocampus's ability to form new memories by up to 40%. Pulling an all-nighter before an exam sabotages the very brain system you need for learning. The hippocampus is your brain's primary memory formation center, taking incoming information and encoding it into a form that can be stored long-term. Without adequate sleep, the hippocampus becomes dramatically less effective at this crucial function. Brain imaging studies show that sleep-deprived people have reduced hippocampal activation when trying to form new memories. The structure is there, the neurons are there, but they're not working properly. It's like trying to save files on a computer with a failing hard drive. Some information gets through, but much of it is lost or corrupted. This is why cramming all night is such a poor strategy. You might feel like you're learning. You might be able to repeat information in the short term, but it's not consolidating properly. The information isn't transferring from temporary storage in the hippocampus to long-term storage in the cortex. When you sit down for the exam, much of what you tried to learn the night before has simply vanished. The cruel irony is that the anxiety about the exam drives people to sacrifice sleep, but that sacrifice makes it harder to perform well on the exam. A well-rested brain with slightly less study time will often outperform an exhausted brain that studied all night. During sleep, the brain replays experiences up to 20 times faster than real time, rapidly consolidating memories. It's like your brain creates highlight reels and time lapses of your experiences to save them efficiently. A 30-minute experience might be replayed in 90 seconds during sleep, compressed but still preserving the essential structure and sequence. This rapid replay serves multiple purposes. First, it allows the brain to process more memories in the limited time available during sleep. Second, the compression might help extract the essential patterns from experiences, filtering out unnecessary details. Third, the high-speed replay might facilitate the transfer of information from the hippocampus to the cortex, speeding up the consolidation process. Researchers have documented this replay by recording from individual neurons in sleeping animals. They can identify specific patterns of neural firing that occurred during a waking experience, say, running through a maze, and then watch for those same patterns during subsequent sleep. The patterns appear, but compressed in time, running through the same sequence of activations, but much faster. This replay isn't random. The brain preferentially replays experiences that were important, surprising, or associated with reward. It's selective, focusing its limited consolidation resources on information that matters. Your brain is constantly curating your memories, choosing what to preserve and what to let fade. Declarative memories, facts and events, are preferentially consolidated during deep sleep, while procedural memories, skills, consolidate during REM sleep. Different types of learning need different types of sleep, which is why a full night matters. If you spend the evening memorizing historical dates, declarative memory, you particularly need the deep sleep that dominates early night. If you spend the evening practicing a guitar chord progression, procedural memory, you particularly need the REM sleep that dominates late night. This division of labor between sleep stages explains why partial sleep is less effective than full sleep. You can't just sleep for the first 4 hours and expect to consolidate both types of learning equally well. You need the full architecture of sleep, the progression from deep sleep early in the night through increasing REM sleep toward morning. Students who study multiple subjects need to sleep enough to get adequate amounts of both sleep types. Learning chemistry formulas, declarative, and practicing calculus problems, procedural, both require sleep, but they require different stages of sleep. Shortchange either stage, and you've partially wasted your study time. This is another reason why sleep schedules matter. If you consistently wake up too early, you're consistently missing late night REM sleep, which means you're consistently under-consolidating procedural memories. If you don't sleep deeply enough early in the night, you're missing declarative memory consolidation. Both matter. Both are necessary. Sleep can help you forget. It actively weakens unimportant memories to prevent information overload. Forgetting isn't always failure. It's sometimes the brain's way of maintaining clarity and focus. If you remembered every moment of every day with equal clarity, your memory would be cluttered with trivia. You'd struggle to find important information amid the noise. You'd be overwhelmed by irrelevant details. Sleep helps solve this problem through a process sometimes called active forgetting. During sleep, synaptic connections that represent unimportant or redundant information are deliberately weakened. The brain isn't just strengthening what matters, it's also pruning what doesn't matter. This process creates contrast in your memory. Important information stands out more clearly because the unimportant information has been dimmed. You remember the main points of a conversation while forgetting the exact wording. You remember the route to a new location while forgetting the specific landmarks you used the first time. Your memory becomes more efficient. more useful, less cluttered. There are rare cases of people who can't forget, who remember every day of their lives in exhaustive detail. And paradoxically, this near-perfect memory often impairs function rather than enhancing it. They struggle to extract meaning from experiences because they can't see the forest for the trees. They're drowning in details. Sleep gives most of us the gift of selective forgetting, maintaining memory systems that preserve what matters while letting go of what doesn't. Your immune system produces more infection-fighting cytokines during sleep, which is why you sleep more when sick. Sleep is both prevention and treatment. Your immune system works best when you're unconscious. When you're fighting an infection, your body increases production of sleep-promoting substances. You feel more tired than usual. You sleep longer and more deeply because your immune system needs that sleep to mount an effective defense. During sleep, particularly deep sleep, your body ramps up production of cytokines, proteins that help fight infection and inflammation. T cells, which are crucial for immune response, become more effective. Your body produces more antibodies. All the cellular machinery of immunity operates at higher efficiency when you're asleep. This is why sleep deprivation makes you more susceptible to illness. Studies have shown that people who sleep less than 7 hours per night are nearly 3 times more likely to develop a cold when exposed to the virus compared to people who sleep 8 hours or more. Sleep isn't just correlated with immune function, it's causally important for it. The relationship works in both directions. Poor sleep weakens immunity, making you more vulnerable to infection. And when you do get sick, your immune response promotes sleep, ensuring you get the rest needed for recovery. It's a bidirectional regulatory system, with sleep and immunity constantly influencing each other. Muscle growth and repair occur primarily during deep sleep, when growth hormone levels peak. Athletes who skimp on sleep are literally preventing their bodies from building the strength they're training for. You can work out as hard as you want, create as much muscle damage as you want through exercise, but if you don't sleep, you won't build muscle effectively. The actual construction work, the rebuilding of muscle fibers, the strengthening of connective tissue, happens at night. Growth hormone is released in pulses throughout the day, but the largest release occurs during deep sleep. This hormone stimulates protein synthesis, promotes muscle growth, facilitates fat metabolism, and supports tissue repair. Without adequate deep sleep, you miss this crucial hormone surge. Professional athletes often prioritize sleep as much as training. They understand that the workout creates the stimulus for adaptation, but sleep is when the adaptation actually occurs. Training breaks you down. Sleep builds you back up stronger. This is also why recovery strategies often emphasize sleep. Ice baths, massage, nutrition, all of these can help, but none of them can replace sleep's fundamental role in physical restoration. Sleep is when your body does the majority of its repair work, when damaged tissues are rebuilt, when the stress of training is transformed into increased capacity. Your digestive system slows down during sleep, which is why late-night eating can disrupt sleep quality. Your gut has its own circadian rhythm and prefers to rest when you do. Digestive processes, the mechanical breakdown of food, the secretion of enzymes, the absorption of nutrients, all operate on daily cycles coordinated with your sleep-wake rhythm. When you eat late at night, especially large or heavy meals, you're asking your digestive system to work when it's programmed to rest. Your stomach has to produce acid, your intestines have to move food along, your pancreas has to secrete enzymes, all while you're trying to sleep. This digestive activity can interfere with sleep in multiple ways. It can raise your body temperature when it should be falling. It can cause discomfort that disrupts sleep. It can trigger acid reflux. And perhaps most importantly, it creates a mismatch between your circadian system's expectation, time to rest, and your digestive system's activity, time to work. People who eat within a few hours of bedtime often report poorer sleep quality, more nighttime awakenings, and less restorative sleep. The specific foods matter too. Fatty, spicy, or very heavy foods are particularly disruptive. But even neutral foods eaten late can interfere simply because of the timing. The optimal pattern seems to be finishing eating several hours before bed, allowing your digestive system to complete most of its work before you lie down to sleep. This aligns your eating schedule with your circadian rhythm, creating conditions for better sleep. During sleep, cerebrospinal fluid flows through the brain up to 10 to 20 times faster than during waking, clearing metabolic waste. This glymphatic system is most active during deep sleep, when brain cells literally shrink to allow fluid to flow between them. Imagine your brain cells are tightly packed houses on a crowded street. During the day, they're pressed close together, leaving little room for anything to pass between them. But during deep sleep, each house shrinks slightly, widening the streets, creating space for the cleaning crews to move through. Cerebrospinal fluid flows through these expanded spaces, carrying away waste products that accumulated during waking hours. Beta amyloid, tau proteins, metabolic byproducts, all the molecular debris generated by normal neural activity, gets swept up and carried away, eventually draining out of the brain into the lymphatic system. This is a relatively recent discovery made possible by new imaging techniques that can track fluid movement in living brains. Before 2012, scientists didn't know the brain had this dedicated waste removal system. They knew sleep was important for brain health, but they didn't understand this fundamental mechanical process, the physical washing of brain tissue that occurs each night. The discovery has profound implications for understanding neurodegenerative diseases. If sleep is when the brain cleanses itself of proteins like beta amyloid, which accumulates in Alzheimer's disease, then chronic poor sleep might allow these proteins to build up over decades, gradually damaging the brain. Sleep isn't just mental rest, it's physical maintenance, as essential as taking out the garbage. Chronic sleep deprivation accelerates aging at the cellular level, shortening telomeres, the protective caps on chromosomes. Lack of sleep doesn't just make you feel older, it makes your cells biologically older. Telomeres are repetitive DNA sequences at the ends of chromosomes, like the plastic tips on shoelaces that prevent fraying. Each time a cell divides, its telomeres get slightly shorter. When telomeres become too short, the cell can no longer divide and becomes senescent, or dies. Telomere length is used as a marker of biological aging. Shorter telomeres generally indicate older biological age, regardless of chronological age. And studies have consistently shown that people who don't get enough sleep have shorter telomeres than people of the same age who sleep adequately. The mechanism isn't fully understood, but it likely involves increased oxidative stress and inflammation from sleep deprivation, both of which accelerate telomere shortening. Sleep deprivation also affects the enzyme telomerase, which can rebuild telomeres, reducing its activity and further contributing to accelerated cellular aging. This means chronic poor sleep doesn't just make you tired, it's literally aging you faster at the most fundamental biological level. Your cells are aging more rapidly, your tissues are wearing out sooner, your biological systems are deteriorating faster than they would with adequate sleep. Time spent sleeping isn't time wasted, it's time invested in longevity. Your heart rate and blood pressure drop during non-REM sleep, giving your cardiovascular system a much-needed break. Sleep is the only time your heart gets to work at a truly relaxed pace for extended periods. During waking hours, even at rest, your cardiovascular system is on standby, ready to respond to demands. Your heart rate stays elevated, your blood pressure remains at waking levels, your blood vessels maintain a certain degree of constriction. But during non-REM sleep, particularly deep sleep, your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system, becomes dominant. Your heart rate slows, sometimes dropping 20-30 beats per minute below waking levels. Your blood pressure decreases by 10 to 20%. Blood vessels relax. The entire cardiovascular system downshifts into a lower demand state. This nightly rest period is crucial for cardiovascular health. People who don't experience this nocturnal blood pressure dip, called non-dippers, have significantly higher risk of heart disease and stroke. Their cardiovascular systems never get a break, operating under elevated pressure 24 hours a day, gradually accumulating damage. The contrast is stark. During REM sleep, your heart rate and blood pressure can actually increase, sometimes reaching or exceeding waking levels. But the deep sleep periods provide essential recovery time, allowing blood vessels to relax and repair, giving the heart a chance to work at reduced output. Over a lifetime, these nightly rest periods add up to years of reduced cardiovascular stress. Years when your heart doesn't have to pump as hard, when your arteries don't have to endure full pressure, when the entire system can maintain and repair itself. Skin cells regenerate faster during sleep, which is why sleep deprivation affects your appearance. It's not just puffiness. Beauty sleep is scientifically accurate. Skin repairs itself most effectively at night. During sleep, your body increases production of growth hormone, which stimulates cell reproduction and regeneration. Collagen production, essential for skin elasticity and repair, increases. Blood flow to the skin increases, delivering nutrients and oxygen while removing waste. Sleep deprivation disrupts all of these processes. Studies have shown that just a few nights of poor sleep leads to visible changes. Increased fine lines and wrinkles, reduced skin elasticity, more uneven pigmentation, increased signs of aging. The skin literally looks older after sleep deprivation. Part of this is vascular. Without adequate sleep, blood vessels don't dilate properly, reducing nutrient delivery to skin cells. Part is hormonal. Decreased growth hormone means less cellular regeneration. Part is related to stress hormones. Elevated cortisol from sleep deprivation breaks down collagen. The eye area is particularly vulnerable because the skin there is thinner and more delicate. Poor sleep leads to fluid accumulation, puffiness, visible blood vessels, dark circles, and more pronounced fine lines. These aren't just cosmetic concerns, they're visible markers of insufficient cellular maintenance throughout your body. Regular adequate sleep, on the other hand, supports skin health in ways that no cream or treatment can fully replicate. The regeneration that occurs during sleep is fundamental, cellular, working from the inside out to maintain and repair the body's largest organ. Sleep paralysis, waking up unable to move, affects about 8% of people at least once in their lives. It occurs when consciousness returns before REM atonia ends, creating a terrifying but harmless mismatch. You're awake, aware of your surroundings, but completely unable to move. You might try to cry out, but find you can't make a sound. You might struggle to move a finger, a toe, anything, but your body remains frozen. The experience typically lasts only a few seconds to a few minutes, though it can feel much longer, and it's often accompanied by hallucinations, shadowy figures in the room, a sense of pressure on your chest, a feeling of malevolent presence. These hallucinations happen because your brain is in a hybrid state, partially dreaming while partially awake, generating threatening imagery that you perceive as real. Throughout history, sleep paralysis has been interpreted through cultural lenses as demon attacks, alien abductions, supernatural visitations. The old hag syndrome in Newfoundland, the nightmare in Germanic folklore, the shadow person in modern accounts, all describe the same phenomenon, filtered through different cultural frameworks. Understanding the neuroscience doesn't make the experience less frightening when it happens, but it does make it less mystifying. Your body is supposed to be paralyzed during REM sleep to prevent you from acting out dreams. Sometimes that paralysis lingers a bit too long after consciousness returns. It's a timing error, not a supernatural event, and it resolves on its own as your brain fully transitions to wakefulness. Some people can experience lucid dreams, knowing they're dreaming while still asleep, and even learn to control them with practice. Lucid dreamers show increased activity in the frontal cortex, suggesting they've reactivated their critical thinking while remaining asleep. It's a fascinating hybrid state. You're deeply asleep by all physiological measures, yet you possess self-awareness and agency, typically associated only with waking consciousness. Most people experience lucid dreams occasionally, often triggered by something bizarre enough to make them question reality even within the dream. But some people develop the ability to become lucid deliberately, using techniques like reality testing, regularly checking throughout the day whether you're dreaming, until the habit carries over into sleep. Once lucid, dreamers can sometimes control dream content, flying, transforming the environment, summoning people or objects. The degree of control varies. Some lucid dreamers can reshape entire dreamscapes at will, while others maintain awareness without much ability to influence what happens. Brain imaging of lucid dreamers shows a unique pattern. The frontal areas responsible for self-awareness and executive function reactivate, while the rest of the brain maintains the characteristic patterns of REM sleep. It's as if one part of consciousness has woken up while the rest remains asleep, creating a state that's neither fully dreaming nor fully waking, but something in between. Some researchers believe studying lucid dreaming might help us understand consciousness itself, how self-awareness emerges from neural activity, what separates conscious from unconscious states, whether consciousness is really binary or exists on a spectrum. Sleepwalking occurs during deep non-REM sleep, not during dreams, which is why sleepwalkers rarely act out dream scenarios. Sleepwalkers are essentially running pre-programmed motor routines while their conscious mind is offline. They might walk downstairs, navigate around furniture, even leave the house, all while deeply asleep. Their eyes are typically open, but they're not truly seeing in the conscious sense. They're operating on autopilot, following familiar motor patterns without awareness or decision-making. This happens because sleepwalking is a partial arousal from deep sleep. The motor cortex becomes active enough to initiate and control movement, but the higher cognitive functions remain asleep. The person isn't consciously directing their actions, nor are they acting out dreams. They're somewhere between sleep and wakefulness, with only some brain systems online. Sleepwalking is most common in children and typically decreases with age. It often runs in families, suggesting genetic factors. Stress, sleep deprivation, and certain medications can trigger episodes in susceptible individuals. The old belief that you shouldn't wake a sleepwalker is partially true, not because it's dangerous to them, but because they might be disoriented and frightened upon sudden awakening. It's better to gently guide them back to bed. They usually won't remember the episode at all in the morning. Sleep talking can occur in any stage of sleep and usually consists of incomprehensible mumbling, though occasionally people say clear sentences. What you say while sleep talking rarely reflects your actual thoughts or secrets. It's more like random neural noise. The speech centers of the brain become active during sleep, sometimes producing vocalization, but without the coherent thought processes that guide waking speech. Sleep talking during REM sleep tends to be more elaborate and may relate to dream content, though it's usually garbled and difficult to understand. Sleep talking during non-REM sleep is typically more mumbled and fragmentary, random words or phrases with no apparent connection to anything. The phenomenon is extremely common. More than half of people talk in their sleep at some point in their lives, though regular sleep talking is less frequent. It's generally harmless, though it can disturb sleeping partners or create embarrassing situations. Interestingly, sleep talkers can sometimes be engaged in conversation. If you speak to a sleep-talking person, they might respond, though their responses are typically nonsensical or tangential. They're not truly conscious, not truly conversing, but some automatic speech production system is responding to vocal stimuli. The content of sleep talking should be taken with considerable skepticism. Despite popular belief, people don't reliably reveal secrets or truthful information while sleep talking. The utterances emerge from a brain in an altered state, operating without the usual cognitive framework, producing speech that may have no meaningful connection to waking thoughts or memories. Exploding head syndrome is a real condition where people hear loud, imaginary noises, like explosions or crashes, when falling asleep or waking up. Despite its dramatic name, it's harmless and likely caused by sudden bursts of neural activity in the auditory cortex. The sound seems to come from inside your head, impossibly loud, sometimes accompanied by a flash of light or a sensation of electrical shock. Then it's gone, leaving you startled and confused but physically unharmed. The sounds vary. Some people hear explosions, others hear doors slamming, cymbals crashing, gunshots, electrical buzzing. The common thread is that they're sudden, loud, and brief, occurring exclusively during sleep transitions, either falling asleep or waking up. The phenomenon is poorly understood, but appears to be related to the brain's transition between sleep and wakefulness. Normally, as you fall asleep, your neural activity gradually decreases in an organized fashion, but sometimes there's a sudden, abnormal burst of activity in the auditory centers. Your brain interprets this internal activation as external sound, creating the perception of a loud noise that never actually occurred. It's more common than you might think. Up to 10 to 15% of people experience it at some point. But because it's so strange and because people often feel embarrassed discussing it, many suffer in silence, not realizing it's a recognized phenomenon with a name and an explanation. There's no cure, but understanding that it's benign helps reduce the anxiety that often accompanies episodes. It's just another oddity of the transitional states between sleep and wakefulness, when the brain is neither fully one nor the other, and occasionally produces strange experiences. Some people experience sleep inertia, severe grogginess upon waking, that can last from minutes to hours. This happens especially when waking from deep sleep, as your brain struggles to transition from delta waves to alert consciousness. Sleep inertia is that thick, foggy feeling when you first wake up, when thinking feels like moving through molasses, when simple tasks seem impossible, when you're not quite sure where you are or what's happening. For most people, sleep inertia lasts only 15 to 30 minutes and is mild, just a brief period of sluggishness before full alertness returns. But for some, it's severe and prolonged. They might feel confused, disoriented, unable to think clearly for an hour or more after waking. Their reaction times are slowed. Their decision-making is impaired. Their cognitive function is severely limited. Sleep inertia is worse when you wake from deep sleep, which is why waking in the middle of the night or being jolted awake by an alarm can leave you feeling more impaired than waking naturally at the end of a sleep cycle. Your brain was in its slowest wave state, and it takes time to speed back up to waking frequencies. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive function and complex thinking, is particularly slow to come back online after sleep. Brain imaging shows reduced activity in this region during sleep inertia, which explains why you might be able to perform simple tasks but struggle with anything requiring judgment or planning. This is why important decisions shouldn't be made immediately upon waking. Your brain isn't fully operational yet. Give it time to transition, to clear the sleep from your neural circuits, to restore full cognitive function before tackling anything demanding. Hypnagogic hallucinations are vivid sensory experiences that occur while falling asleep, distinct from dreams. You might see geometric patterns, hear voices, or feel presences, your brain experimenting with perception as it transitions to sleep. These aren't dreams exactly, because you're not yet fully asleep, and they're not waking perceptions, because there's no external stimulus. There's something in between, occurring in that liminal space where consciousness is dissolving. The hallucinations can be visual, swirling colors, faces appearing and disappearing, intricate patterns that shift and evolve. They can be auditory, hearing your name called, snippets of conversation, music, strange sounds. They can be tactile, feeling like you're floating, sensing movement when you're still, feeling touches on your skin. Sometimes multiple senses are involved simultaneously. These experiences happen because different parts of your brain fall asleep at different rates. Your sensory processing areas might still be active, generating spontaneous activity, while your reality testing mechanisms are already offline. So you perceive these internal signals as if they were coming from outside, accepting them without the critical evaluation that would immediately identify them as unreal. Hypnagogic hallucinations are completely normal and surprisingly common, though people don't always talk about them. They're particularly vivid in children and tend to decrease with age. Stress, fatigue, and irregular sleep schedules can make them more frequent and intense. The corresponding phenomenon when waking up is called hypnopompic hallucination, the same kind of sensory experiences, but occurring during the transition from sleep to wakefulness, rather than from wakefulness to sleep. Both represent the fascinating, sometimes unsettling experiences that can occur when your brain is between states. Before electric lighting, humans commonly practiced biphasic sleep, sleeping in two segments with a period of wakefulness in the middle of the night. Historical records describe first sleep and second sleep as normal, with people using the midnight wake period for prayer, intimacy, or reflection. Medieval manuscripts mention first sleep explicitly. Literature from the period references activities done after first sleep and before second sleep. Physicians gave instructions for when to take medicines. During first sleep, or during the wakeful period, or during second sleep. The pattern was widespread across pre-industrial societies. People would sleep for 3 or 4 hours after dark, wake naturally for an hour or two, then sleep again until morning. The midnight waking period was considered valuable time. Quiet, dark, intimate. People would pray, meditate, talk with sleeping partners, reflect on dreams, or engage in gentle activities by candlelight. This pattern may be more natural to human biology than the consolidated 8-hour sleep that became standard after electric lighting. When people are isolated from artificial light and allowed to sleep naturally, they often spontaneously develop segmented sleep, though not always, suggesting individual variation in this tendency. The shift to consolidated sleep happened gradually as artificial lighting extended productive hours into the evening. Going to bed later meant less time for sleep overall, and the segmented pattern compressed into a single continuous block. By the early 20th century, medical texts were describing the segmented sleep pattern as abnormal, something to be corrected, when just a century earlier it had been the norm. The siesta, midday napping, aligns with a natural circadian dip in alertness that occurs in the early afternoon. Our biology supports a brief afternoon rest, regardless of whether we had a big lunch. This post-lunch dip in alertness is sometimes called the afternoon slump, and it's not just caused by eating, though a heavy meal can make it worse. It's built into your circadian rhythm. Your alertness follows a daily pattern with peaks and valleys. There's a major peak in the morning, a dip in the early afternoon, usually between 1 to 3 p.m., and another peak in the early evening before alertness declines toward bedtime. This afternoon dip happens even if you've eaten lightly or not at all, even if you've had coffee, even if you slept perfectly the night before. Many cultures have traditionally structured their days around this biological reality, incorporating siestas or afternoon rest periods. In hot climates, It makes particular sense, avoiding midday heat while also honoring the body's natural tendency toward decreased alertness. Modern industrial society often ignores the circadian dip, expecting sustained high productivity throughout the day. But fighting your biology has costs. The afternoon hours are when accidents increase, when cognitive performance decreases, when people struggle most with attention and alertness. A brief nap, even just 20-30 minutes, during this circadian low point can significantly improve afternoon alertness, cognitive performance, and mood. It's not laziness, it's alignment with human biology, working with your circadian rhythm rather than against it. The invention of artificial lighting in the late 19th century dramatically reduced average sleep duration by about 1 to 2 hours per night. Humans now sleep less than at any point in our species' history, a massive unplanned experiment in sleep deprivation. Before electric light, people's sleep schedules were largely dictated by the sun. After sunset, with only fire and candles for illumination, productive activities became difficult. People went to bed earlier, often within a few hours of darkness falling, and slept until dawn or shortly before. Electric lighting changed everything. Suddenly, evening hours could be used productively. Work could extend into the night. Entertainment became viable after dark. The day effectively lengthened by several hours, and those hours came directly out of sleep time. We went to bed later but still needed to wake at roughly the same time, often even earlier, as industrialization demanded adherence to factory schedules. The result was a dramatic reduction in average sleep duration. People in the early 20th century slept an hour or two less than their great-grandparents had in the pre-electric era. This trend has continued and even accelerated with the introduction of screens. LED lights from phones, tablets, and computers emit blue wavelengths that suppress melatonin even more effectively than incandescent bulbs. We're now able to flood our eyes with daylight spectrum light at midnight, confusing our circadian systems in ways that would have been impossible a century ago. We're conducting a grand experiment on ourselves, living with sleep durations that are unprecedented in human history, and we're only beginning to understand the long-term consequences for health, cognitive function, and lifespan. Different cultures have vastly different beliefs about where people should sleep, from communal sleeping to isolated bedrooms. The Western ideal of sleeping alone in a private room is historically and globally unusual. For most of human history, and still in many cultures today, sleeping alone would be considered strange, lonely, even unsafe. People slept in groups, families together, communities in shared spaces, with children sleeping alongside parents, sometimes for years. This communal sleeping made practical sense: shared body heat in cold climates, safety in numbers against predators or threats, social bonding and comfort, easier childcare. The idea that each person should have their own room, their own bed, sleeping in solitude, is a relatively recent invention tied to prosperity, individualism, and changing social values. Different cultures also have different beliefs about co-sleeping with infants. Some consider it essential for bonding and breastfeeding. Others consider it dangerous and inappropriate. These aren't just personal preferences. They're deep cultural patterns passed down through generations, each with their own logic and justifications. Even sleeping positions and arrangements within shared spaces vary culturally. Some cultures arrange sleeping spaces in circles, others in rows. Some have strict hierarchies about who sleeps where. Some separate sexes, others don't. The details differ, but the commonality is that sleeping alone in a locked room would seem isolated and strange to most humans throughout history. This raises interesting questions about sleep quality and psychology. Do we sleep better alone or with others? Does sleeping in isolation contribute to modern loneliness? Have we lost something valuable by abandoning communal sleeping, or gained something essential in privacy and independence? Ancient Egyptians had documented sleep incubation rituals, sleeping in temples to receive divine messages through dreams. Many cultures throughout history have treated dreams as meaningful messages rather than random neural activity. The practice of sleep incubation, deliberately sleeping in sacred spaces to induce prophetic or healing dreams, appears in Egyptian, Greek, Roman, and many other ancient cultures. In ancient Egypt, temples dedicated to specific gods offered sleep incubation services. Seekers of wisdom or healing would undergo purification rituals, make offerings, and then sleep in the temple, hoping the deity would visit them in dreams and provide guidance or cure their ailments. Priests would interpret the dreams upon waking, translating the divine messages. The Greeks had similar practices at the temples of Asclepius, the god of healing. Sick people would travel to these healing temples, participate in rituals, and sleep in a special chamber called the Abaton. The god was believed to visit during sleep, either curing the person directly or providing dream guidance about treatment. These practices weren't considered superstitious by the people of the time. They were part of mainstream medicine and religion. Dreams were understood as a legitimate channel of communication with the divine, perhaps even more reliable than waking perception, because in sleep, the rational mind's interference was removed. Modern psychology has sometimes revisited these practices, not as communication with gods, but as techniques for accessing the unconscious mind. Sleep incubation, setting an intention before sleep to dream about a specific question, can sometimes produce insights, though whether these come from divine sources or from unconscious processing depends on your worldview. Sleep apnea causes people to stop breathing repeatedly during sleep, sometimes hundreds of times per night, severely fragmenting sleep quality. Many people with sleep apnea don't know they have it, attributing their exhaustion to other causes. They wake up tired after a full night in bed, struggle with daytime sleepiness, depend on caffeine to function, but they don't realize that during the night, their breathing repeatedly stops for seconds or even minutes at a time. Sleep apnea happens when the airway collapses during sleep, blocking airflow. Oxygen levels drop, carbon dioxide builds up. Eventually, the brain triggers a partial arousal, just enough to restore muscle tone and reopen the airway. The person gasps, breathes briefly, then falls back asleep, and then it happens again and again, hundreds of times per night. These arousals are usually too brief to remember. The person doesn't wake up consciously, doesn't realize their sleep is being shattered into fragments. But each arousal prevents them from reaching or maintaining deep sleep or REM sleep. Their brain never gets to complete its nightly maintenance tasks. They're chronically sleep-deprived despite spending adequate time in bed. The consequences extend beyond fatigue. Untreated sleep apnea increases risk of high blood pressure, heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and cognitive decline. The repeated oxygen deprivation stresses the cardiovascular system. The chronic sleep fragmentation impairs metabolism and immune function. Treatment, usually with CPAP, continuous positive airway pressure, machines that keep the airway open, can be life-changing. People who've suffered for years suddenly sleep through the night, wake feeling rested, experience dramatic improvements in energy, mood, and cognitive function. They're finally getting the sleep their bodies desperately needed. Narcolepsy is caused by the loss of neurons that produce hypocretin, a neurotransmitter that promotes wakefulness. Without hypocretin, the boundary between sleep and wakefulness becomes unstable, causing sudden sleep attacks. People with narcolepsy can fall asleep suddenly and involuntarily, sometimes in the middle of conversations, while eating, even while driving. They don't just feel sleepy. They're overwhelmed by irresistible sleep that arrives without warning. The disorder also causes other symptoms related to the blurred boundary between sleep and waking. Cataplexy, sudden muscle weakness triggered by strong emotions, occurs when the paralysis of REM sleep intrudes into waking life. Someone laughing or feeling surprised might suddenly collapse, conscious but unable to move, experiencing REM atonia while awake. Sleep paralysis and hypnagogic hallucinations, which occasionally affect healthy people, are common and frequent in narcolepsy. The transitions between sleep and waking are unstable, creating these hybrid states more often. Narcolepsy isn't just excessive sleepiness. It's a fundamental disorder of state stability. The brain's ability to maintain distinct states, awake versus asleep, is compromised. Elements of sleep invade wakefulness. Elements of wakefulness intrude into sleep. The neat boundaries most people take for granted become permeable and unreliable. The cause appears to be autoimmune in many cases. The immune system mistakenly destroys the neurons that produce hypocretin. Why this happens isn't fully understood, but genetic susceptibility, combined with environmental triggers, seems to be involved. Once the neurons are lost, they don't regenerate, making narcolepsy a chronic condition requiring ongoing management. Restless legs syndrome creates an irresistible urge to move your legs, particularly at night, disrupting the ability to fall asleep. Movement temporarily relieves the sensation, creating a maddening cycle of discomfort and motion. You lie down, ready to sleep, and then the sensation begins, a creeping, crawling, uncomfortable feeling deep in your legs. Not quite pain, not quite itching, but something else, something urgent. The only relief is to move. Flex your feet, shake your legs, get up and walk. The movement helps, but only briefly. As soon as you stop and try to rest again, the sensation returns. You can't keep still long enough to fall asleep. The need to move is overwhelming, involuntary, impossible to ignore through willpower alone. The syndrome is poorly understood, but appears to involve dopamine system dysfunction, and often responds to medications that affect dopamine. It's sometimes associated with iron deficiency, pregnancy, or kidney disease, though many cases have no identifiable cause. For people with severe restless leg syndrome, bedtime becomes a source of dread rather than relief. The evening hours, when symptoms are worst, stretch out endlessly. Sleep becomes elusive, and the chronic sleep deprivation compounds the misery. The condition is more common than many realize, perhaps affecting 5 to 10% of adults to some degree. but it's often dismissed or minimized by people who haven't experienced it. The inability to rest, to be still, to let sleep arrive naturally, creates suffering that's difficult to explain to someone whose legs allow them to lie peacefully in bed. REM sleep behavior disorder occurs when REM atonia fails, causing people to physically act out their dreams. This can lead to injuries and is sometimes an early warning sign of neurodegenerative diseases decades before other symptoms appear. Instead of lying paralyzed during REM sleep, people with this disorder move. They punch, kick, leap out of bed, run, shout, acting out whatever's happening in their dreams. The person is completely asleep, unaware of their actions. They're experiencing a dream, and their body is responding to the dream content as if it were real. If they dream of fighting an attacker, they throw actual punches. If they dream of fleeing danger, they might jump out of bed and run into walls. If they dream of arguments, they might shout or gesture violently. Injuries are common, both to the person with the disorder and to sleeping partners. People have broken bones, suffered lacerations, concussions, all while completely asleep. The movements can be surprisingly violent and forceful, driven by dream emotions and scenarios. What makes REM sleep behavior disorder particularly medically significant is its association with neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's disease and Lewy body dementia. Studies have found that many people who develop REM sleep behavior disorder eventually develop one of these conditions, sometimes decades later. The disorder might be an early warning sign, appearing long before the classic symptoms of neurodegeneration emerge. Treatment focuses on safety, padding the bedroom, removing furniture with sharp edges, sometimes having partners sleep separately. Medications can sometimes reduce symptoms, but the underlying cause, the failure of the brainstem systems that normally create REM atonia, is difficult to correct. Insomnia affects about 30% of adults at some point in their lives, but chronic insomnia, lasting months or years, affects about 10%. The anxiety about not sleeping often makes insomnia worse, creating a self-perpetuating cycle of worry and wakefulness. You lie in bed, exhausted but unable to sleep. You watch the clock, calculating how many hours you could still get if you fell asleep right now. The calculation itself keeps you awake. You worry about how tired you'll be tomorrow, and that worry activates your stress response, making sleep even more elusive. Insomnia isn't just difficulty falling asleep. It can also mean waking during the night and being unable to return to sleep, or waking too early in the morning. Some people experience all three patterns. The common thread is insufficient sleep, despite adequate opportunity. You're in bed, you want to sleep, but sleep won't come. Acute insomnia, lasting days or weeks, is often triggered by stress, illness, travel, or major life changes. Most people experience this occasionally, but chronic insomnia persists long after the initial trigger has resolved. The bedroom becomes associated with wakefulness and frustration rather than sleep. Arousal systems become hyperactive at night. The natural sleep drive becomes disrupted. Treatment often involves cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, which addresses the thoughts and behaviors that perpetuate sleeplessness, breaking the association between bed and wakefulness, challenging anxious thoughts about sleep, establishing consistent sleep schedules. Paradoxically, sometimes the treatment involves spending less time in bed, not more, strengthening sleep pressure by slightly restricting sleep opportunity. The goal isn't perfect sleep every night. It's reducing the anxiety around sleep, restoring the bedroom as a place of rest rather than stress, allowing the body's natural sleep systems to function without interference from worry and hyperarousal. Scientists can now decode simple dream content from brain scans, predicting general categories of dream imagery with about 60% accuracy. By matching brain activity patterns during sleep to patterns during waking perception, researchers are beginning to read dreams. This isn't science fiction. It's happening now in sleep laboratories. Researchers monitor brain activity while people sleep, wake them during REM periods, ask what they were dreaming about, then use machine learning to identify patterns. The technology isn't precise enough to reconstruct detailed dream narratives or see exactly what you're seeing in a dream, but it can identify broad categories. Were you dreaming about people or objects? Indoor or outdoor scenes? Movement or stillness? The patterns of activity in your visual cortex during sleep resemble the patterns that occur when you perceive similar things while awake. This suggests that dreaming involves the same neural machinery as waking perception. The brain activates visual areas as if you were actually seeing, auditory areas as if you were actually hearing. Dreams aren't abstract or purely symbolic. They're simulated experiences that engage the same systems as real experiences. The implications are profound and slightly unsettling. If dreams can be decoded from brain activity, what does that mean for privacy of thought? What does it mean for our understanding of consciousness? If the neural patterns of dreaming and waking perception are similar, what really distinguishes them? Is consciousness less about sensory input and more about the brain's interpretation of neural activity, whether that activity comes from eyes or from memory? We're still in the early stages of dream decoding, but the trajectory is clear. The last completely private space, your dreams, may not remain private forever. Recent research suggests sleep deprivation may allow toxic proteins like beta amyloid to accumulate, potentially increasing Alzheimer's risk. Poor sleep in middle age might be laying groundwork for cognitive decline decades later. The glymphatic system, which clears beta amyloid from the brain, is most active during deep sleep. When you don't get enough deep sleep, beta amyloid clearance becomes less efficient. The protein accumulates in small amounts each night, amounts so tiny they cause no immediate symptoms. But over years and decades, this nightly accumulation might build up. Beta amyloid forms plaques between neurons, interfering with neural communication and contributing to the neurodegeneration characteristic of Alzheimer's disease. Sleep disturbance appears in the early stages of Alzheimer's, but the relationship might be bidirectional. Poor sleep might contribute to disease development, and developing disease might worsen sleep, creating a vicious cycle. This doesn't mean that poor sleep causes Alzheimer's directly, or that good sleep prevents it entirely. Alzheimer's is complex, involving genetics, lifestyle, and factors we don't yet understand. But sleep appears to be one piece of the puzzle, one modifiable factor that influences risk. The research is still emerging, and the timescales are long. The effects of sleep patterns in your 40s and 50s might not appear until your 70s or 80s. But the implication is clear. Sleep isn't just about how you feel tomorrow. It's about brain health decades from now. The cumulative effect of thousands of nights of inadequate sleep might manifest as cognitive decline in old age. Some researchers are investigating whether we can learn during sleep by playing information to sleeping subjects, though results are mixed. The brain can process and even form simple associations during sleep, but true learning seems to require wakefulness. Early studies suggested you could learn languages or acquire knowledge by listening to recordings while asleep. These claims proved largely false. Sleeping people don't encode complex new information the way waking people do. But more recent research has found something subtler. The sleeping brain can process simple sounds and smells. It can form basic associations. If you pair a sound with an odor repeatedly during sleep, your brain might learn that association, even though you're unconscious. If you expose people to words from a foreign language during sleep, they might show very slight advantages in later learning those words while awake. These effects are small and limited. You can't learn calculus or history while sleeping, but you might be able to prime certain associations, strengthen specific memories that are already partially formed, or influence very basic learning in limited ways. The most promising application is targeted memory reactivation, playing sounds associated with learned material during sleep to strengthen those specific memories. If you learn something while hearing a particular sound, playing that sound during subsequent sleep can enhance memory for what you learned. It's not learning during sleep exactly, but rather optimizing the consolidation of what you learned while awake. The sleeping brain is processing its environment more than we once thought, but it's not a passive sponge absorbing whatever information flows past. Sleep is specialized for consolidating and organizing existing knowledge, not for acquiring entirely new knowledge. Targeted memory reactivation uses sounds, or scents, associated with learned information during sleep to strengthen specific memories. Playing a sound you heard while learning something during your subsequent sleep can enhance recall of that information. This technique takes advantage of the fact that memory consolidation during sleep can be influenced by external cues. The cues essentially tell the brain, this memory, the one associated with this sound, is important. Prioritize it. In experiments, people learn information while hearing specific sounds or smelling specific scents. Later, during sleep, those sounds or scents are presented again. The people who received the cues during sleep show better memory for the associated information compared to people who slept without the cues. The effect works best when the cues are presented during slow-wave sleep, the deep sleep when memory consolidation is most active. The sound or scent needs to be subtle enough not to wake the person, but detectable enough to influence brain processing. It's a delicate balance. This technique doesn't create new memories or insert information. It selectively strengthens memories that already exist. Think of it as tagging certain memories as high priority, ensuring they get more attention during the brain's nightly consolidation process. The applications are still being explored. Could students improve exam performance by studying with specific background sounds and playing those sounds during sleep? Could rehabilitation programs use scents to strengthen motor memories during sleep? Could therapists help patients consolidate therapeutic insights by using sensory cues during sleep? The technique is promising but also limited. You can't overcome poor study habits with sounds during sleep. You can't bypass the need to actually learn things while awake. but you might be able to optimize what you've learned, giving important memories an edge during the consolidation process. The discovery of the glymphatic system in 2012 revealed that sleep physically cleanses the brain, overturning previous assumptions about sleep's purely neural functions. Sleep is literally housekeeping, a biological necessity for maintaining a clean brain environment. Before this discovery, scientists understood sleep as important for neural processes, memory consolidation, synaptic regulation, hormonal balance. They didn't realize there was also a physical cleaning mechanism, a plumbing system that only functions efficiently during sleep. The discovery came from new imaging techniques that could track fluid movement in living brains. Researchers injected fluorescent dyes into mice and watched as cerebrospinal fluid flowed through brain tissue, carrying away waste products. The flow was dramatically faster during sleep, particularly during deep sleep when brain cells shrink and create space for fluid to move between them. This explained something that had puzzled neuroscientists. Why does the brain, unlike other organs, not have a traditional lymphatic system for waste removal? The answer: it has something different, something that depends on sleep to function. The glymphatic system, named for its dependence on glial cells and its lymphatic-like function, is the brain's unique solution to waste management. The implications transformed our understanding of what sleep is for. It's not just about neural plasticity or energy conservation. It's about basic maintenance, about physically cleaning the organ that generates consciousness. Miss this cleaning and waste accumulates. Accumulate waste long enough, and the brain begins to malfunction. We still don't fully understand why REM sleep evolved or what makes it essential, despite knowing humans die without it. REM sleep seems uniquely important for mammals and birds, suggesting it serves functions beyond basic restoration. Reptiles, amphibians, and fish show sleep states that resemble non-REM sleep, but they don't clearly exhibit REM sleep. REM appears to be a more recent evolutionary innovation, emerging with warm-blooded animals and complex brains. What does REM sleep do that non-REM sleep cannot? We have theories: emotional processing, memory integration, brain development, creativity enhancement, neural circuit maintenance. All of these have supporting evidence. But we don't have a unified explanation for why REM sleep takes the form it does, why the paradoxical combination of an active brain and a paralyzed body, why the vivid dreams, why the rapid eye movements. Some researchers believe REM sleep is primarily about brain development. The extremely high proportion of REM sleep in infants and fetuses, sometimes more than half of total sleep, suggests it plays a crucial role in building neural circuits. Perhaps adult REM sleep maintains and repairs these circuits, serving a maintenance function for systems that were initially built through infant REM sleep. Others emphasize emotional processing. REM sleep might allow the brain to process emotional experiences in a state where stress hormones are suppressed, taking the emotional intensity out of memories while preserving the informational content. This could explain why REM-rich sleep helps people cope with trauma and difficult experiences. But these explanations, while plausible, remain incomplete. REM sleep keeps its secrets, continuing to puzzle researchers despite decades of study. The relationship between consciousness and sleep remains philosophically puzzling. Where does you go during dreamless sleep? Sleep challenges our understanding of consciousness as continuous. We disappear and reappear each night without concern. When you're in deep, dreamless sleep, where is your sense of self? What happens to the continuous narrative of your conscious experience? You go to bed as yourself, you lose all awareness, and hours later you wake as yourself again. But where were you in between? Some philosophers argue this proves consciousness isn't continuous, that it's a series of discrete moments strung together by memory. Each morning you wake up is like rebooting, creating a new instance of consciousness that inherits the memories of previous instances, but isn't literally continuous with them. The you that went to sleep has ceased to exist. The you that wakes up is a successor, convinced of continuity through inherited memory. Others argue that consciousness during dreamless sleep might not be absent, just unmemorable. Perhaps there's some minimal form of awareness, even in deep sleep, some basic sense of existing, but without the complexity or intensity to form lasting memories. You're there, in some thin sense, but you can't remember being there. The puzzle deepens when you consider anesthesia, which creates states that seem similar to deep sleep, but are pharmacologically different. Are you absent during anesthesia in the same way you're absent during dreamless sleep? Or are these different kinds of absence, different ways of not being conscious? These aren't just abstract philosophical questions. They touch on deep issues about personal identity, the nature of the self, what it means to be a continuous person across time. And sleep, this universal daily experience, sits right at the center of these mysteries. Some theories suggest dreams evolved to simulate threats, providing a safe practice space for responding to danger. Your nightmares might be your brain's way of rehearsing for worst-case scenarios without actual risk. This is called the threat simulation theory, and it suggests dreams aren't random noise or mere byproducts. They're adaptive features that helped our ancestors survive. In dreams, you often face challenges, being chased, falling, losing things, confronting threats. These scenarios, while unpleasant, might serve a purpose. They let you practice responses to danger, escape, hiding, problem solving, in an environment where failure has no real consequences. Your brain runs simulations, testing different strategies, strengthening neural patterns that might be useful in actual threatening situations. The theory helps explain why nightmares are so common, why threatening content appears more frequently in dreams than positive content, why anxiety and fear are among the most common dream emotions. If dreams evolved to prepare you for threats, then frightening dreams aren't malfunctions. They're the system working as designed. Children have more nightmares than adults, which fits this theory. Children are more vulnerable, have less experience with threats, and might need more practice. As you age and accumulate real-world experience, the brain might need less simulated practice. So, nightmares decrease. But the theory isn't without problems. Many dreams aren't threatening at all. Modern threats, job stress, financial problems, social conflicts, don't look like the evolutionary threats that would have shaped dream content. And if dreams are practice, why don't we get better at handling threats through all this nightly rehearsal? Still, the idea resonates. Perhaps dreams, for all their strangeness, serve ancient purposes we're only beginning to understand. Despite decades of research, we're still discovering fundamental aspects of sleep. It remains one of neuroscience's greatest mysteries. Every night you enter a state we don't fully understand, emerging renewed through processes we're only beginning to comprehend. A reminder that the most familiar experiences can be the most mysterious. Sleep is so common, so universal, so intimately known to every person, and yet it continues to surprise us, to reveal new layers, to resist complete explanation. We've learned so much. We know about stages and cycles. We know about memory consolidation and cellular repair. We've discovered the glymphatic system, mapped dream activity, identified the genes that control circadian rhythms. We can predict some aspects of sleep from brain activity, manipulate memories during sleep, even decode fragments of dream content. And yet fundamental questions remain open. Why do we need to be unconscious? Why couldn't these processes happen while awake? What is sleep doing that's so essential it can't be eliminated by evolution? Why do dreams take the bizarre forms they do? How does consciousness actually disappear and reappear each night? Perhaps these questions will be answered in the coming decades. Perhaps new technologies, new imaging methods, new theoretical frameworks will crack the remaining mysteries of sleep. Or perhaps sleep will continue to elude complete understanding, maintaining its enigmatic character even as we learn more details. Either way, sleep remains one of the great mysteries of existence, a daily reminder that we don't fully understand ourselves, that the most ordinary experiences contain depths we haven't fathomed, that the boundary between consciousness and unconsciousness is more subtle and strange than it appears. Each night, you surrender to this mystery. You lie down, close your eyes, and let yourself fall into a state that remains, in essential ways, as puzzling as it was to ancient peoples who first wondered what sleep means and why we dream. And there we are, 100 facts about sleep, about this strange and necessary state you'll return to tonight, and tomorrow night, and every night for the rest of your life. We've traveled from the cellular to the cosmic, from individual neurons firing in synchronized waves to the evolutionary pressures that shaped sleep across millions of years. We've explored the architecture of sleep, its stages and cycles, its purposes and mysteries. We've seen how sleep changes across the lifespan, how it varies across species, how it connects to everything from memory to immune function to the very structure of consciousness. But perhaps the most remarkable thing about sleep isn't any single fact. It's the totality of it, the way sleep weaves itself into every aspect of biology, every level of existence. You can't separate sleep from waking life, because sleep is what makes waking life possible. The restoration that happens in darkness enables the activity that happens in light. The offline processing that occurs while you're unconscious supports the online processing when you're aware. Sleep is both ordinary and miraculous. Ordinary because you do it every day, as naturally as breathing. Miraculous because within that ordinary activity, extraordinary things are happening. Your brain reorganizing itself, your memories being sorted and strengthened, your body repairing damage, your consciousness temporarily dissolving and then reforming. Tonight, when you lie down to sleep, you'll be participating in something ancient and mysterious, something that connects you to every sleeping creature, something that's been happening since the first nervous systems evolved the capacity to rest. So rest well, knowing that while you sleep, unseen processes will tend to you. Your brain will clean itself. Your memories will consolidate. Your body will repair. Your consciousness will dissolve into something else, something we still don't fully understand. And then tomorrow it will return as it always has, as if the gap never happened. The mystery of sleep surrounds you every night, and perhaps that's exactly as it should be. A reminder that even in our age of knowledge and technology, profound mysteries remain, hiding in the most familiar corners of human experience. Sweet dreams.